Chapter 1842. I'm a martial artist in online games. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1843. Ordinary people had to take an airship to travel from Yuhuiqing to Sky Dragon City. However, Sky Dragon City was Yuhuiqing's subsidiary city. As the city lord, Wang Yu had the authority to teleport directly. With a flash of light, Wang Yu and the rest of Quan Zhen's group appeared in the city lord residence of Sky Dragon City. The Quan Zhen group had just teleported to the city lord residence. Before they could stabilize themselves, Dugu Jiuqiang and the rest had teleported back from Dragon Island. What are you guys doing here? Hurry up and defend the city. There will be monsters attacking the city soon. Seeing someone standing near the teleportation portal, Dugu Jiuqiang berated without even looking at who it was. Hearing Dugu Jiuqiang's voice, Wang Yu turned around instinctively. Huh! Seeing this familiar and terrifying face, Dugu Jiuqiang quivered and swallowed the words he was about to say. After pausing for a moment, Dugu Jiuqiang organized his words and asked in confusion, "God Ox, why are you here?" At the same time, Dugu Jiuqiang was still secretly guessing, damn it, what are these guys doing here? Are they here to watch the show? I even mocked them just now. Could it be that they are here to kick us when we are down? Dugu Jiuqiang's worries weren't without reason. Given Wuji's character, it was normal for him to kick them when they were down. Just as Wang Yu was about to explain his intentions, Wuji said coldly, "What does it have to do with you?" This, to be honest, Dugu Jiuqiang was also a guild leader. He still cared about his reputation in front of so many subordinate. Given Wuji's attitude, if not for Wang Yu, Dugu Jiuqiang would have killed him with a spear. Seeing the awkward situation, Chun Xiang quickly stepped forward and said with a smile, "We just finished our match and came to Heavenly Dragon City to take a look. However, it seems that Heavenly Dragon City is not very peaceful." "Yeah," Dugu Jiuqiang said, "our Heavenly Dragon City is really plagued with disasters, huh?" At this point, Dugu Jiuqiang suddenly paused. "Nyo deity, are you guys busy now?" "In a sense, I'm not busy," Wang Yu answered honestly. "You have to save our Heavenly Dragon City," Dugu Jiuqiang said with a bitter face. "We are being targeted by the evil creatures of the Dragon Island again. The evil dragon Moffat is coming to attack the city soon." Putting aside the evil dragon Moffat's battle prowess, the destructive power of these dragons was unparalleled. Not to mention a big boss like the evil dragon Moffat, even a small dragon like Long Outyen could turn Heavenly Dragon City into scorched earth with just a few dragon breath. If it was just ganging up on Moffat, it would not be difficult for the tens of thousands of people at the end of the world. However, to stop him from attacking the city was another matter altogether. One had to know that the dragons were very mobile, and it was difficult for ordinary people to keep up with them. Moreover, for a big boss like the evil dragon Moffat, ordinary people would not be able to defeat him without at least 100 people. Therefore, it would not be very effective to deal with Moffat with numbers alone. Building a main city was a very costly matter. After the massacre last time, Heavenly Dragon City had just recovered. If the evil dragon Moffat really spat on the city walls, it would be a waste of money. To stop the evil dragon Moffat from attacking the city while protecting Heavenly Dragon City, the following two factors must be met. First, they must be very mobile. Second, they must be strong enough to stop Moffat. In summary, Chuanzhen was definitely the best candidate. There was no need to talk about mobility. The members of Chuanzhen all had cloak. Although their flying speed was not as exaggerated as that of the dragons, they were much stronger than other players. If they were not mobile enough, the others would not be able to either. As for strength, Dugu Jiuqiang did not know how strong the other members of Chuanzhen were. However, Wang Yu's strength had definitely refreshed Dugu Jiuqiang's understanding time and time again. It was not an exaggeration to say that even if Wang Yu said that he could kill Moffat alone, Dugu Jiuqiang would not dare to doubt it. After all, this man had various high-end records of slaying dragons and gods. The scene of him killing Long Aotian alone was still vivid in Dugu Jiuqiang's mind. Hearing Dugu Jiuqiang's words, Wang Yu did not say anything. Instead, he turned his head to look at Wuji because Wang Yu knew what Wuji was thinking. Wuji raised an eyebrow and glanced at Dugu Jiuqiang. Why? What does your life and death have to do with us? F***ck. Being despised by Wuji, Dugu Jiuqiang became anxious. He pointed at Wuji and scolded, "Damn you, Wuji, you old dog! Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Did I speak to you?" Saying that, Dugu Jiuqiang took out his weapon and was about to stab Wuji. "Boss, calm down." Seeing this scene, Light Brother and the others behind Dugu Jiuqiang turned pale with fright. They quickly grabbed Dugu Jiuqiang from both sides and said, "We're in trouble now. Don't make things worse, all right?" Saying that, Light Brother did not forget to look at Wang Yu. No matter how terrifying evil dragon Moffat was, it was not worth mentioning in front of a certain someone. If they could not stop Moffat, at most, Celestial Dragon City would be destroyed. If they offended Chuanjin, it would be the end of the world. Dugu Jiuqiang followed Light Brother's gaze and looked at the expressionless Wang Yu next to Wuji. His anger immediately dissipated. He said pitifully, "God Ox, we're friends. Celestial Dragon City is also related to you. You can't just watch them die." "I didn't say I wouldn't help them." Seeing that the time was right, Wuji said again, "But we spent 3 scrolls just to teleport here. Do you think we have to help you just because you talk back and forth?" "Don't worry about that." Once Wuji relented, Dugu Jiuqiang immediately felt relieved. As long as we can successfully defend the city, money is not a problem. Although Chuanjin was shameless in terms of strength, it was worth it to spend money to hire them to defend the city. Moreover, compared to the zero construction progress, spending money was indeed not a big deal. Of course money is not a problem. Wuji glanced at Dugu Jiuqiang and said, "But this is the end of the world. You have to pay more. Come and fight me, mother*****. Dugu Jiuqiang was furious again. He pointed his middle finger at Wuji. "Retard." Wuji looked at the angry Dugu Jiuqiang as if he was looking at an idiot and said, 100,000 gold per person, plus all the items dropped by the boss. This is our condition. If we can come to an agreement, we will stay and help you. If not, we will return to you Huiqing immediately. 100,000? Why don't you go rob someone? Wang Yu's group had a total of 11 people. 100,000 gold per person would be 1,100,000 gold. If converted to RMB, it would be 11 million. What kind of small fresh meat celebrity was this? His appearance fee was more than 10 million. Wuji smiled faintly. Robbing someone is too slow to earn money. It doesn't fit our style. Wasn't that so? With Wuji's exorbitant demand, not to mention robbing someone, even kidnapping someone wouldn't earn money so quickly. P.S. I wanted to update 3 chapters, but the counterattacking Mario next door pulled me back and didn't let me write. I'm so angry. The only thing I can do now is to wish everyone a Happy New Year. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1844. Of course, it was still the end of the world. Money was not a problem. Moreover, it was not a bad deal to hire the top team of the national server for 1 million gold coins. Dugu Jiuqiang was very cunning. Although he said that it was too expensive, he did not even think about it and agreed to it. Dragon Island and Celestial Dragon City were separated by the water. If it were not for the fact that players could not fly to the island, they would not even need a teleportation point. As a dragon, Evil Dragon Moffat's flying speed was unquestionable. While Wang Yu and the others were arguing with Dugu Jiuqiang, a black dot appeared in the distant sky. It was Evil Dragon Moffat. Moffat approached Celestial Dragon City at an extremely fast speed. When everyone saw Moffat's appearance, he was less than 500 meters away from Celestial Dragon City. As an advanced dragon, Moffat was already more than 10 meters tall. Now that his seal had been removed, his strength had skyrocketed, and his size had doubled. Although Celestial Dragon City was not a major city like Holy Light City, it was still a fortress city in the background story. After the reconstruction, the city walls were specially reinforced. Now, the city walls were 17 to 18 meters tall. Even so, Moffat was still a head taller than the city walls of Celestial Dragon City. Under Dugu Jiuqiang's command, the players of the End of the World had already set up a defensive formation on the city walls. However, when they saw Evil Dragon Moffat's huge body, they were shocked. Although it was not necessarily true that a big guy was stronger than a small guy, whether it was in the game or in real life, the most intuitive factor to judge an opponent's strength was their body size. For example, when the thin and weak Mario next door stood next to the author who was 8 feet tall, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell who was on the offensive and who was on the defensive. Now, they were facing a huge monster like Evil Dragon Moffat. The city walls were nothing more than a fence in front of Evil Dragon Moffat, and the ballistae and cannons guarding the city were like toys to him. Very soon, Evil Dragon Moffat was within the firing range of Celestial Dragon City's defensive turret. Attack! As soon as the order was given, the ballistae and cannons on the city walls began to fire at the Evil Dragon Moffat. Moffat's body was so huge that no one needed to aim. However, to everyone's despair, the scales on the Evil Dragon Moffat's body were shockingly high in both physical and magical defense. The ballista was a defensive weapon with extremely high penetrative power. When the ballista hit Moffat's body, it was like being poked by a toothpick. The black scales on Moffat's body flashed, and the attacks from the people on the city wall were immediately bounced off. Roar! Although the harvesting players hadn't dealt any damage to the evil dragon, the fact that these ants had taken the initiative to attack him was the greatest provocation to the evil dragon. Moffat roared angrily. Immediately after, Moffat raised his head and opened his mouth, spewing a mouthful of dragon breath at the city wall. Dragon's breath. -50000. Moffat's mouth was several meters wide. When he spat out the dragon's breath, it covered an area of a dozen or so meters horizontally. The section of Celestial Dragon City's sturdy city wall that was struck by the dragon's breath lost a large chunk of its HP. The players on the city wall, as well as the defensive weapons around them, were instantly incinerated. Crap! Seeing this, the eyes of the players on the city wall nearly popped out of their sockets. Celestial Dragon City's fortified city wall had extremely high defense. Even if players' awakening skills landed on the city wall, they wouldn't have much of an effect. However, Moffat had lost 500,000 HP with a single spit. His attack power was simply outrageous. How were they supposed to fight against him? Setting aside the evil dragon's defense, even the tankiest shield warrior only had several 100,000 HP. With such low attack power, how could they possibly stand up to Moffat? Moreover, this was not a single-target attack. It was an AoE skill that covered a wide area of effect. No matter how many players came, they wouldn't be able to deal with such a bug-like opponent. Puny worms. After spitting out the dragon's breath, Evil Dragon Moffat did not forget to taunt them. "Is this all you've got? Kneel at the feet of the great Lord Moffat. I'll let you know what it means to." Bang! Before Evil Dragon Moffat could finish his sentence, a figure suddenly descended from the sky. His feet were covered in lightning as he stepped on Evil Dragon Moffat's nose. Thunder stomp! This person was none other than Wang Yu. Wang Yu was a dragon slayer. He had an extremely high suppressive effect on dragon-type monsters. At the same time, Thunder Stomp had a strong priority effect. With this stomp, Moffat's words were immediately stomped back into his mouth. F***ck, which god is this? Seeing this familiar skill and the terrifying figure, the players of the Apocalypse were instantly dumbfounded. Even Dugu Jiuqiang, who had followed up from the city wall, was extremely shocked. Naturally, Dugu Jiuqiang was well aware of Wang Yu's strength. However, this kick had nothing to do with the level of strength. Everyone had clearly seen Evil Dragon Moffat's dragon's breath just now. Even if an ordinary person had the same equipment and skills as Wang Yu, they would instinctively retreat in the face of such a terrifying monster. However, Wang Yu took the initiative to kick the arrogant Moffat without even thinking about it. As the saying goes, those who are skilled are bold. What kind of courage was this? What kind of confidence was this? Obviously, Moffat was also stunned by Wang Yu's kick. This beast had never thought that someone would dare to hit his face. Even his father had never hit his face before. Lure him away! Just as Moffat and the players of the Apocalypse were in a daze, Wang Yu received an order from Wuji. Without the slightest pause, Wang Yu stepped on Moffat's nose and rushed forward. He rushed to Moffat's face, then raised his sandbag-sized fist and punched Moffat's eye. Moffat's defense was all on the scale armor. Even the city defense equipment could not penetrate it. However, Moffat's eye did not have scale armor. Duong! With a muffled sound, Wang Yu's entire arm smashed into Moffat's eye socket. 221454. A huge damage value floated up from Moffat's head. Roar! As the punch landed, Moffat let out a tragic roar. His two claws subconsciously slapped down on his face. Goodbye. Seeing this, Wang Yu withdrew his fist, turned around and jumped off Moffat's head. He used Qinggong and ran behind Moffat at an extremely fast speed. Trying to run after putting on a show? How could there be such a good thing? Moffat turned around and chased after Wang Yu. Dugu Jiuqiang was also a despicable person. Since Moffat had been lured away, he should just stay put. This bastard thought he had an opportunity and immediately ordered Moffat to attack again. The attacks of the Apocalypse players on the city wall smashed down on Moffat's back. Chapter 1845. Rumble, magic cannons and arrows landed on Moffat's back, producing loud noises. From Wang Yu's attack just now, it was not difficult to tell that Evil Dragon Moffat was covered in scales from head to toe. It was almost immune to physical and magical attack. If one wanted to hurt Evil Dragon Moffat, they would have to hit the parts of its body that were not covered by scales. Although the city defense equipment had strong attack power, its control was far inferior to the players' own skills. Now that Moffat's back was facing the players of the Apocalypse, the damage dealt was naturally negligible. However, for Moffat, although the damage was not high, his behavior was a challenge to the pride of the dragons. Roar! In a fit of rage, Moffat turned his head and roared at the sky. His voice immediately spread in all directions, covering the entire Celestial Dragon City. Yee! The monsters around Celestial Dragon City trembled when they heard the roar. As if they had heard a signal, they swarmed toward Celestial Dragon City from all directions. That shameless dragon is over there! At that moment, Uranus and the others also heard Moffat's roar. Uranus pointed in the direction of Moffat and chased after Moffat with a group of his men. After Moffat's roar dissipated, the players of the Apocalypse stood on the city wall and saw the monsters swarming in from all directions. As the main training ground of the players, there were millions of monsters outside Celestial Dragon City. With so many monsters swarming in at the same time, the scene was like a tsunami. As far as the eye could see, there was an endless black mass of monsters. It was a ghastly sight. Oh no, there are monsters attacking from the east. There are monsters attacking from the west too. There are monsters attacking from the north too. When the players on the city wall saw such a terrifying scene, they all sent messages in the channel. When Wuji saw this scene, he pointed at Dugu Jiuqiang and scolded, F***CKU, Dugu Jiuqiang. Look at what you've done. Moffat's siege was not a big deal, But it was not a small matter either, because the dragons in the game had always been willful. Sieging a city was just to vent their emotions. All he needed to do was to divert the aggro. Originally, Wuji's original strategy was to let Wang Yu lure Moffat away from Celestial Dragon City. However, Dugu Jiuqiang was such a B***starred that he stabbed Moffat in the back at the critical moment. Now, it directly triggered the monsters to attack the city. Monsters attacking a city was a big deal. Not only were there a lot of normal monsters, but they also had a single goal. Once they received the order to attack, they would not stop until they were dead. After Heavenly Dragon City had been rebuilt, there were less than 100,000 players in the city. More than half of these players were players from the apocalypse. Moreover, the space on the city walls was limited. Only a few thousand players could stand at the same time. Now that millions of monsters were attacking, Heavenly Dragon City would not be able to hold them off. Of course, the players could also take the initiative to leave the city to fight. However, a ruthless dragon like Moffat was standing outside the city gates. A single dragon breath could kill a whole group of people. It would be futile for the players to charge at him. They would just be sending themselves to death. Since the launch of Rebirth, this was obviously the first time that a monster siege had happened in the game. What's going on? It was also the first time that Wang Yu had seen such a situation. Seeing so many monsters rushing to the city walls as if they had gone mad, Wang Yu was dumbfounded. Wuji replied, "The monsters are attacking the city. Old cow, be careful. Try to bring Moffat as far away as possible." Although they had not experienced a monster siege before, Chuanjun and the others had defended the guild encampment before. They knew that when there was a boss, these small monsters would provide a very powerful buff. It was not easy to defend against so many small monsters. Now that they had Moffat's buff, it would be even more difficult for the defending players to defend the city. All right. Wang Yu received Wuji's order and turned around. "You cowardly reptile." Moffat was a highly intelligent AI. His aggro mechanism was naturally different from ordinary small monsters. Not only could he shift aggro at any time, but he could also increase aggro at the same time. After summoning the small monsters to attack the city, Moffat saw that Wang Yu had run back. He cursed and shot a dragon breath at Wang Yu. The scorching heat wave covered Wang Yu's position from top to bottom. Wang Yu raised his head and glanced at Moffat's dragon breath. He rolled forward unhurriedly and rolled to the side of Moffat's big feet. Whoosh! With a gust of wind, the dragon breath swept over Wang Yu's head. This was the disadvantage of being tall. The bigger the body, the more flaws there were. If Moffat was a little smaller, his dragon breath would have destroyed everything in front of him. However, Moffat was extremely tall. When he breathed from top to bottom, there was a space between his head and his feet that could not be covered. Wang Yu's combat mind was very strong. He saw the flaw at a glance and took advantage of the opportunity to roll under Moffat. Moffat's dragon breath was basically useless against Wang Yu. With such a huge body like Moffat's, the skill he used was Armageddon, so his movements would be frozen for a long time. Without waiting for Moffat's skill to finish freezing, Wang Yu quickly switched the gloves in her hands to a long staff. She then stepped on Moffat's foot and jumped up, stabbing the long staff at Moffat's crotch that was not covered by the scales. Everyone here was an ordinary person. They might not have seen a dragon before, but Uncle Nyo had to remind them that if they encountered such creatures in the wild in the future, they must remember that the crotch of a dragon was the same as the crotch of a human. It was also a vital part. Therefore, the part of a dragon's crotch that was not covered by scales was only a small part. Wang Yu's strike was ruthless and accurate. 224546. A huge damage value floated up. Roar! Moffat immediately let out a loud roar. Under the intense pain, Moffat's eyes rolled back. Damn reptile! Moffat roared and raised his foot to step on Wang Yu. Wang Yu jumped lightly and landed on Moffat's foot. With Moffat's height, It was extremely difficult for him to step on Moffat's right foot with his left foot. Wang Yu jumped on Moffat's foot. Moffat roared anxiously, but there was nothing he could do. Wang Yu first kicked Moffat's nose, then punched Moffat's eye. He then poked Moffat's penis, directly pulling all of Moffat's aggro onto himself. Now that Moffat could not even hit Wang Yu, one could imagine his resentment towards Wang Yu. Seeing Moffat's appearance, Wang Yu knew that the time was right. He used Qinggong and flew into the distance. Seeing that Wang Yu was about to escape, Moffat was unwilling to let him go. He spread his wings and followed closely behind. At this time, Uranus had also arrived at the city wall following the sound. F***ck. Seeing Moffat fly away again, Uranus cursed and pointed at Moffat. Continue chasing. Chapter 1846. The monsters attacking the city usually came from afar. The monsters closest to Celestial Dragon City were, of course, the lowest-leveled monsters. These monsters were easier to deal with. Even with the boss morale boost, they were just a bunch of vegetables in front of the high-level players who were above level 60. The players defending the city were able to hold them off easily. However, as the monsters' levels got higher and higher, the players defending the city gradually felt the pressure. After all, it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands, and a strong man could not fight against so many people. The number of players on the city walls was limited, and it was not foolproof. Now that Wang Yu had lured Murphy away, the players defending the city not only lost the powerful buff of the monsters attacking the city, but also gave the other players a chance to fight outside the city. Seeing that Wang Yu had led Murphy away, Wu Ji immediately ordered Dugu Jiuqiang's subordinates, "Open the city gates. Let everyone out of the city to fight." As the saying went, if you don't have money, don't join the crowd. In the eyes of most people, Wu Ji was just a stranger. The players at the end of the world would naturally not listen to Wu Ji's orders. Seeing this seemingly annoying cleric giving orders to everyone with an arrogant look, everyone looked at Dugu Jiuqiang with dissatisfaction. Dugu Jiuqiang was also a guild leader. Of course, he knew what his subordinates' expressions meant. As an old rival of Chuanjin, Dugu Jiuqiang knew Wu Ji's abilities. So, he nodded and pointed at Wu Ji. "Everyone, don't hesitate. Everyone has to listen to him later." With Dugu Jiuqiang's words, everyone nodded reluctantly and opened the city gates. The players in the city rushed out of Celestial Dragon City under Dugu Jiuqiang's orders. Hey! Although Wu Ji didn't like the guild mode of the apocalypse, the feeling of commanding thousands of troops was indeed very satisfying. Seeing the Heavenly Dragon City players leaving the city, Wu Ji chuckled and asked Dugu Jiuqiang, "They won't disobey my orders, right?" "Of course not." Dugu Jiuqiang said confidently, "I've already given the order. You're the commander now." "Really?" At this moment, Chun Xiang came over and asked, "Wu Ji, have them turn around and attack Songxin." F***ck. "Chun Quan, don't mess around." Hearing Chun Xiang's words, Dugu Jiuqiang's face turned pale. "Haha." Spring Xiang smirked and said, "Don't be afraid, I was just joking. Go to hell." Dugu Jiuqiang wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and hurriedly issued an order in the guild channel. "If the cleric on the wall is giving out orders blindly, you must ask for my opinion first." Monster sieges had both advantages and disadvantages to the players, but not all of them were bad. Although monster sieges could destroy the players' homes, the monsters were usually very scattered. They would only gather together when they were sieging the city. Not only that, but during the sieges, the players would also gain a lot of experience and honor points from killing monsters. Even the monster drop rate would increase. Therefore, monster sieges could also be said to be a special activity for the players to level up, hunt for treasures, and farm honor points. Those who could guard the city walls were, of course, the most elite players of the apocalypse. Seeing that there were monsters everywhere outside the city, but they didn't have a chance to attack, the players in the city had long since become impatient. Now that Morphet had left, the city gates were wide open, and the players in the city rushed out like a flood. It didn't take long for everyone to rush out of the city. At this time, after the first few waves of attacks, countless monsters had died outside the city, and the ground was littered with monsters' dropped materials and equipment. Although they were all low-level equipment and materials, no matter how small a fly was, it was still meat. These trash equipment could be decomposed into many rare materials. Even if they were directly sold to the shops, it would still be a source of income. As soon as everyone exited the city, they saw the ground littered with equipment and materials. Immediately, like a swarm of bees, they rushed over and started stealing monsters and equipment. Immediately, the outskirts of the city became a chaotic mess. The scene of hundreds of thousands of players running around outside the city was absolutely shocking. With so many people scrambling to be the first, they were like a meat grinder, devouring the black mass of monsters that were sieging the city. Of course, in this chaos, countless players were trampled to death and injured. There were even some with evil intentions who took the opportunity to kill people and steal their equipment. After all, not all the people in Sky Dragon City were players of the Apocalypse. The Apocalypse was not a kind world, so it was natural that there were players with evil intentions who took advantage of the situation. Crap! Seeing this scene, Dugu Jiuqiang was completely dumbfounded. He had assumed that these players would unite against the enemy after leaving the city. Who would have thought that it would be so chaotic? Discipline was the most important factor in a large-scale battlefield. Now, it seemed that Sky Dragon City's players had the upper hand in this chaotic situation. However, the monsters outside the city were only small monsters. Players had the ability to instantly kill them, so no matter how they fought, they would not be at a disadvantage. The levels of the monsters would increase over time. When the monsters' levels became too high, and players could not instantly kill them, the monsters would not be at a disadvantage. Compared to high-level monsters, players were naturally easier to kill. Moreover, players had a much higher drop rate than monsters. When the time came, when the players outside the city aimed their weapons at the players, Sky Dragon City would most likely collapse. Everyone, spread out in a single line. Tanks at the front, damage dealers at the back. Surround Sky Dragon City. While Dugu Jiuqiang was helpless against the chaos below, Wuji turned on the main city shout and sent the order to everyone. After receiving Wuji's order, the players in the Apocalypse were still fine. Since Dugu Jiuqiang had given the order, everyone naturally obeyed Wuji's order. However, when playing a game, most people's main goal was to have fun. Who would listen to someone else's orders? Moreover, the current unorganized and undisciplined situation seemed to be more enjoyable for the players outside the Apocalypse. These players could not normally kill monsters, but now they could kill monsters and slash people. Who would want to miss such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? At this time, of course, they ignored Wuji's order and pretended not to hear it. For a time, other than the players who received the order and retreated to the city wall, the other players continued to kill monsters, slash people, and pick up equipment. They were having a great time. Damn it, these bastards actually dropped the ball at such a crucial moment. Is it time to use them? Seeing that the other players were indifferent to Wuji's order, Dugu Jiuqiang cursed angrily. However, he only cursed and did not dare to take any action like he did in the past. After all, Dugu Jiuqiang was Sky Dragon City's city lord. Now that the monsters were attacking the city, Dugu Jiuqiang still hoped that others would work for him. Of course, he did not dare to use violence to threaten them. Chapter 1847. However, Wuji didn't care about this. Seeing that the Apocalypse World players were already in formation, Wuji calmly waved his hand and ordered, "Attack!" Yee! Receiving Wuji's order, the Apocalypse World players were stunned. No one dared to make a move. What a joke! This wasn't a joke. If they attacked the players, wouldn't the players be helping the monsters to attack the city? Wouldn't this be digging their own graves? Wuji old dog, you're messing with me. Dugu Jiuqiang was even angrier. I gave you the guild because I trusted you. How can you mess around like this? What do you know? Wuji rolled his eyes at Dugu Jiuqiang. Do you know why you're so useless? If you don't use thunderous methods, how can you show your kindness? In this situation, people who don't follow the rules are worse than the enemy. If we don't get rid of them first, more people will die. But, although Wuji's words were a bit nonsensical, it wasn't without reason. Dugu Jiuqiang was stunned. If we kill them, how can we defend the city? You're talking as if they will help you if you don't kill them, Wuji said with disdain. Do you have to wait for them to turn around and attack you? Do you have a brain? What's more, your guild can't even defend a city with tens of thousands of people. With Wuji's reprimand, Dugu Jiuqiang immediately swallowed back the words that were at the tip of his tongue. After thinking for a while, Dugu Jiuqiang simply repeated Wuji's order, listen to him, attack. This kind of thing was actually finding someone to take responsibility for. Dugu Jiuqiang stated that everyone had to listen to Wuji's orders, but he also said that if Wuji messed around, he would have to ask him. Obeying wasn't blindly following, attacking wasn't courting death. Of course, none of them dared to obey Wuji's command. Otherwise, if something happened to them, they would have to apologize to the entire guild. Now that their guild leader had spoken, Apocalypse's members no longer hesitated. Immediately, they pulled into formation and fired their magic arrows at the front lines. Boom, 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 boom. Following a series of explosions, white lights of death covered the area. The Heavenly Dragon City players, who had been fighting over monsters and equipment, were blinded by this wave of attack. Expressions of horror appeared on their faces. At the same time, Wuji's order reached everyone's ears. Get into a straight line formation and surround the Heavenly Dragon City. At this time, the importance of a team could be seen. If the disobedient Celestial Dragon City players were from another guild, they would have fought back against the Apocalypse. However, to put it nicely, these players were opportunists. To put it bluntly, they were a group of mobs. Not to mention guilds, most of these players were small groups, and there were even some solo players. Usually, they were bullied by the Apocalypse. At this moment, when they saw the Apocalypse killing people, their first thought wasn't revenge, but joy that they weren't the ones who died. What followed was fear of the Apocalypse. Fear naturally came from the deterrence of force. When they heard Wuji's order again, these players who originally treated Wuji's words as farts became as obedient as rabbit. They lowered their heads and reluctantly joined the Apocalypse's formation. Those who were killed by the Apocalypse were naturally furious. However, when they came outside the city to incite everyone to fight against the Apocalypse, who knew that all the players outside the city had already joined the Apocalypse's formation. What a joke, what does it have to do with us if you die? If they joined the world Apocalypse, they would be able to kill monsters and obtain equipment. If they followed this motley crew and went against the world Apocalypse, there would only be death. These fellows with ulterior motives naturally knew better than anyone else what they should choose. Seeing this scene, the players who were ready to take revenge suddenly lost their courage. They had no choice but to compromise and join the Apocalypse's formation. This, seeing Wuji's simple and violent wave of attacks to enforce the discipline of the players outside the city, Dugu Jiuqiang looked at Wuji in shock and said, "What the F***ck? Nonsense." Wuji said, "Is there a more effective method than this? Aren't you afraid that they will betray us?" Dugu Jiuqiang asked curiously, "What does it have to do with me? The Apocalypse and the life and death of Celestial Dragon City have nothing to do with me." Wuji replied indifferently, F***ck. Cold sweat flowed down the back of Dugu Jiuqiang's head. Damn, Dugu Jiuqiang finally understood why he couldn't beat Wuji. This son of AB***TCH's character was too F***King bad. After pulling up the formation, the chaotic situation outside Celestial Dragon City became orderly. More than 100,000 players neatly surrounded the city, separating Celestial Dragon City from the attacking monsters. The essence of rebirth lay in teamwork. With their cooperation, everything became much easier. The tanks focused on defense, the DPS focused on dealing damage, and the healers focused on healing the front line. Whether it was offense or defense, everything became orderly. The attacking monsters were also easily blocked by the Celestial Dragon City players outside the city with the help of the defensive equipment on the city walls. The chaotic situation was now orderly, and Dugu Jiuqiang could see the light of victory. Although Dugu Jiuqiang had some complaints about Wuji's bad character, when he saw the players easily blocking the attacking monsters outside the city, Dugu Jiuqiang couldn't help but respect Wuji. Wuji was able to lead a few people to rampage in the game world, and he was able to go against a major guild like the Apocalypse for so many years. This guy had some skills. The crisis of Celestial Dragon City had been alleviated under Wuji's command. If everything went smoothly, it wouldn't be difficult to defend until the siege ended. On the other side, Wang Yu had lured the evil dragon Moffat all the way to the Dragonblood Plateau. Wang Yu only stopped when he could no longer see the attacking monsters. Wang Yu stopped, and Moffat also landed on the ground. He pointed angrily at Wang Yu and said, "Lowly worm, why aren't you running anymore? The more you run, the more excited I get." Wang Yu was stunned. "Is that so?" Wang Yu raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you a male or female dragon? Why did that stick make you so excited?" "You?" Moffat's face turned sinister when he heard Wang Yu's mockery. It was a humiliation for the evil dragon Moffat to be poked in that place. Now that Wang Yu used it to humiliate him, one could imagine how Moffat felt. "I'm going to kill you!" Moffat roared. He turned around and swung his thick tail at Wang Yu. Chapter 1848. Rumble. As Moffat's tail swept across the area, the surrounding flora and fauna were all swept to the ground. What a coincidence! Wang Yu smiled and jumped back, dodging Moffat's attack. He then said, "I'm going to kill you too." As he spoke, Wang Yu stomped on the ground and leaped onto Moffat's back. He then stepped on Moffat's back and ran toward its head. The terror of creatures like giant dragons lay in their destructive power. A single breath was enough to destroy an entire city. A single stomp from a giant dragon was comparable to any powerful attack. What was even more terrifying was that the giant dragon was covered in sturdy scales that were immune to most physical and magical attacks. Even strategic siege weapons like ballistae and magic crystal cannons could only tickle the giant dragon's body. With such high attack and defense, the giant dragon was practically a mobile turret. Ordinary players would not be able to break through the giant dragon's defense even if the giant dragon remained motionless and allowed the players to attack it. Therefore, nobody dared to provoke a real dragon-type monster without some real ability. As a sealed boss, the evil dragon Moffat was naturally stronger than ordinary dragon-type monsters. Its body was also larger. However, it was precisely because of this that the evil dragon Moffat was much easier to deal with than other monsters in Wang Yu's eyes. A Grandmaster of Combat was an agility-based combat class that focused on attacking the opponent's weaknesses. Although the evil dragon Moffat was huge, its weaknesses were undoubtedly obvious. Of course, Moffat's body was as huge as a city wall. No matter how obvious its weaknesses were, ordinary Grandmasters of Combat would not be able to catch up to it. However, it was Moffat's bad luck to have encountered a martial arts Grandmaster like Wang Yu. In just a few leaps, Wang Yu had jumped onto Moffat's neck. No matter how strong Moffat was, his back was still a blind spot that he could not touch. Feeling that Wang Yu had jumped onto his neck, Moffat was shocked. He flapped his wings desperately on the ground and tried to grab the back of his neck with his claws, trying to knock Wang Yu down. Faced with Moffat's struggle, Wang Yu clamped his feet on the dragon scales on Moffat's back and used the 1,000-kilogram drop to stabilize himself. No matter how Moffat shook his body, Wang Yu did not move at all. Steadying himself, Wang Yu aimed at the circle of palm-sized scales on the back of Murphy's neck and stabbed down with the fingers of his right hand like a knife. The reverse scale was the softest and most vital part of the dragon's. Wang Yu's stab was right in the middle of the reverse scale. Poochie! A muffled sound rang out. Wang Yu's entire palm was inserted into the gap between Moffat's reverse scales. A cloud of golden dragon blood sprayed out and splattered all over Wang Yu. Roar! Moffat let out a loud roar in pain. However, Wang Yu did not have the slightest intention of stopping. With a sudden turn of his palm, he grabbed the scale and lifted it up. Rip! With an ear-piercing sound, a palm-sized dragon scale was directly ripped off by Wang Yu. Roar! Under the intense pain, Moffat raised his neck reflexively and let out a heart-wrenching scream. For dragons, the most terrifying thing was to have one's scale ripped off. Moreover, at this time, Wang Yu had ripped off his reverse scale. This was definitely a bone-piercing pain. Moffat's shrill scream even spread to Sky Dragon City in the distance. On the city wall, Dugu Jiuqiang and the people of Chuanjin were all terrified when they heard the sound. They looked at each other in unison. This sound should be the evil dragon Moffat, right? Dugu Jiuqiang asked in horror. Yes. Wuji nodded and said in surprise, but it sounds like he's in great pain. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Even without Wuji saying it, everyone could hear how shrill Moffat's scream was. They just did not dare to confirm that it was Moffat who was screaming. F***CK, what did Iron Bull, that beast, do to Moffat to be able to make a boss dragon wail like this? At the same time, Uranus and the others who had caught up also heard Moffat scream. Hearing this shrill scream, Uranus and the others were extremely surprised. This evil dragon Moffat was screaming so miserably. Was there another boss around? Seems like it worked. Seeing Moffat's reaction, Wang Yu was also a little surprised. Wang Yu had killed many dragons and knew that the weakness of dragon-type monsters was their reverse scale. However, it was the first time Wang Yu had encountered a guy as sensitive as Moffat. Since this trick was so effective, Wang Yu would not show mercy. After throwing the torn dragon scale into his backpack, Wang Yu stuck his palm in again. Dragons were all treasures, and the evil dragon's reverse scale was a precious material for forging armor. Naturally, Wang Yu would not throw it away. Rip! Roar! Another scale was torn off. Moffat screamed in pain as he smashed his head against his back. At the same time, he spread his wings and flew up, tumbling in the air. Such violent shaking made it difficult for Wang Yu to stand still. Therefore, Wang Yu switched the weapon in his hand to the dragon spear and stabbed it into the part where Moffat's scale was torn off. Half of the nearly 3-meter-long dragon spear was inserted in. After fixing it in place, Wang Yu grabbed the spear handle with his left hand and continued to peel off the scale with his right. After Wang Yu peeled off another 3 or 4 dragon scales, Moffat finally could not stand the pain anymore. He simply leaned back and smashed his back against the ground. The evil dragon Moffat's huge body fell from the sky, creating a huge commotion. Boom! With a loud noise, Moffat smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. The entire Dragon Blood Plateau shook with it. However, although this movement was loud, it was of no use at all. Wang Yu was very agile. Just at the moment when Moffat hit the ground, Wang Yu flashed to Moffat's side, allowing Moffat to have a solid and intimate contact with the ground. Just then, Uranus and the rest also followed the commotion and chased after them. When they saw Wang Yu floating above Moffat, everyone was stunned. Uranus' heart skipped a beat when he saw this. He casually cast a detection spell. However, the system prompted, "This skill cannot be used on players." It's a player? Seeing the system prompt, the expressions on Uranus and the others' faces immediately changed from astonishment to shock. At first, Uranus thought that the guy in front of him was a humanoid boss. Who would have thought that the guy who beat up the evil dragon Moffat and made him scream in pain was actually a player? Uranus and the others suddenly couldn't believe their eyes. A mere player beat up the evil dragon Moffat like this. How was that possible? Please remember the original domain name of this book. Mobile version. Chapter 1849. It was clear that Uranus and the others were very confident in their own strength since they dared to hunt down a boss like the evil dragon Moffat. Even so, Uranus had never thought of challenging Moffat alone. However, not only did someone challenge Moffat alone, but he even beat Moffat up. One could only imagine how Uranus and the others felt at that moment. Could it be that Moffat is actually very weak? Logic mumbled to himself after recovering from the shock. Don't care if he's weak or not, Uranus said with a cold expression. This despicable beast actually broke his promise. I must kill him with my own hands. Everyone, let's attack together. We can't let him die in the hands of others. Okay. The others immediately rushed forward upon receiving Uranus's order. Someone from the apocalypse? Wang Yu had seen Uranus and the others in midair. He thought that they were helpers from the apocalypse. After all, ordinary players did not have the ability to fight a boss like Moffat. The only guild in the entire Sky Dragon City that had such an expert was the apocalypse. Therefore, when Wang Yu saw Uranus and the others coming to steal the kill, he did not stop them and allowed them to rush to Moffat's side. Moffat was also a boss with high AI. After fighting with Wang Yu for a few rounds, Moffat realized how difficult it was to deal with this guy in front of him. Wang Yu was already so difficult to deal with. Now that Uranus and the others were coming at him aggressively, Moffat naturally did not dare to be careless. Therefore, Moffat got up and spread his wings to take off. Ares. However, at that moment, Uranus gave the order, and a warrior behind him rushed to Moffat's feet. The warrior named Ares was wearing a shiny black armor and held a very strange weapon in his hand. The weapon looked like a scythe, but there was a black chain hanging on the scythe's handle. Seeing that Moffat got up and flew, Ares swung the black chain on the handle of the scythe, circling the scythe a few times. Then, he raised his hand and the scythe flew towards Moffat's big feet. The scythe was extremely fast and flew to Moffat's feet in an instant. Puff! With a crisp sound, the scythe wrapped around Moffat's foot. At the same time, Ares tightened his grip on the chain, and a bolt of black lightning attached to Moffat's foot along the chain. Sizzle! The next moment, Moffat's entire body lit up with dazzling electric arcs. The black lightning was rather strange. The scales on Moffat's body had an extremely high defense, but after being struck by the black lightning, Moffat was immediately paralyzed in midair. Come down! Ares let out a roar and pulled down forcefully with his arms. Plop! Murphy, who had already flown into the air, was forcefully dragged down by Ares and fell to the ground. Zeus! Apollo! As soon as Moffat landed, Uranus gave another order. A player dressed as a magician emerged from behind Zeus. A dazzling ball of lightning burst out from the arm of the player named Zeus. As he pulled his hands back, a purple lightning spear appeared in his hands. Zeus held the spear in his right hand, ran a few steps, and swung it diagonally upward. The lightning spear flew straight at Moffat. Roar! Of course, Moffat was not a guy who would not fight back. Seeing the lightning spear flying over, Moffat slapped it down with his claws. Whoosh! The lightning spear was shattered by Moffat's slap. However, the lightning spear did not disappear after being shattered. The purple lightning element quickly condensed into a huge electric net in midair, covering Moffat from top to bottom. Almost at the same time, a guy dressed as an archer in red leather armor also appeared at Moffat's feet. The archer did not take out a bow. Instead, he dug his hands into his thighs, and 5 daggers appeared in each of his palms. Hit! The archer raised his hand, and 10 daggers flew into the sky with flames. They all pierced into Moffat's eyes. Roar! Moffat was in pain. He suddenly got up and broke free from Ares and Zeus' control. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dragon element at Uranus and the others. When everyone saw this, they calmly stood behind Uranus. Uranus calmly took a step forward, raised a tower shield, and smashed it on the ground, activating shield wall. Kaboom! A huge shadow of a shield blocked in front of Uranus and the others. Moffat's dragon element was repelled after hitting the shield. Huh! Seeing the battle on the ground, Wang Yu had a surprised expression on his face. Wang Yu had seen and even fought with the professional experts of the guilds during the apocalypse. As a defeated opponent of Wang Yu knew the strength of the top experts of the apocalypse like the back of his hand. In the eyes of ordinary people, the strength of professional experts was almost the same. In any case, they were all very strong, so strong that ordinary people could not tell the difference. Wang Yu, on the other hand, was different. Wang Yu was also an expert, so he naturally had a very unique insight. It was true that the combat teams of the apocalypse were strong. Whether it was the individual strength or the teamwork between the players in front of him, they were obviously much stronger than the combat teams of the apocalypse. Even when compared to the Kingdom of Nine States, they were not the slightest bit inferior. Take the previous wave of crowd control as an example. It should be known that beast-type monsters had a strong immunity to crowd control skills. As the best among beast-type monsters, dragons were even more difficult to control. Players' crowd control skills had little effect on dragons. However, from the flying scythe-foot bind to the electric net cover to the archer's damage output, the three players' skills could be said to be flawless. If they were a step faster, the crowd control effect of the first two skills would stack, and if they were a step slower, the three skills would not be able to connect. Even though Wang Yu was used to the tacit understanding between Chuanjin's group, he could not help but feel his eyes light up when he saw the coordination between the players on the ground. Since when did such a group of experts appear in the apocalypse? Why did such a group of ruthless people not reveal themselves before? While Wang Yu was still in a daze, Morpheus had already finished unleashing his dragon breath. Taking advantage of Morpheus's stupor, Wang Yu descended from the sky and stomped on the back of Morpheus's neck. This sudden stomp caused Morpheus's head to fall to the ground. Seeing this, Uranus rushed up and smashed Morpheus's head with his shield bash. Buzz! Moffat was momentarily stunned, and the people behind Uranus took advantage of the opportunity to perform a more precise combination of control than before. With the cooperation of the entire team, Morpheus was able to control Morpheus for as long as 3 seconds. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1850. Currently, the most effective way for Wang Yu to deal with Moffat was to peel off his scales or attack the parts of Moffat that were not covered by scales. However, compared to the parts covered by scales, there were very few parts of Moffat's body that were not covered. Attacking those soft parts not only required superb skills, but also high accuracy. After all, Moffat was a dragon-type boss with unparalleled strength. He was not a piece of wood that would just stand there and wait for death. In the face of Wang Yu's attack, he naturally refused to stand still and wait for another attack. Especially after Wang Yu peeled off a few of his scales, Moffat also realized how terrifying Wang Yu was. Therefore, his entire body kept rolling back and forth in the sky and on the ground, twisting his body frantically to avoid Wang Yu's attack. Even Wang Yu found it extremely difficult to deal with Moffat, who was jumping up and down. After all, Moffat was too strong. If he attacked such a huge creature while it was jumping around, he might lose his life if he was even grazed by it. Although with Wang Yu's strength, it would not be as tragic as being sat on by Moffat and dying, it would be a little difficult to hit the vital parts of Moffat's body that were not covered by scales. At this time, Moffat was firmly controlled by the exquisite cooperation of a team of players below. Although each wave of control only lasted for 3 seconds, it gave Wang Yu an opportunity to take advantage of. Just as Moffat was controlled in place, Wang Yu descended from midair, thrust his palm downwards, and peeled off the scales in one go. In the blink of an eye, several scales on the back of Moffat's neck were peeled off one by Wang Yu. While Wang Yu was attacking from above, Uranus and the others were not idle either. The archer Apollo kept throwing flying daggers at Uranus' eyes, nostrils and mouth, causing clouds of golden blood to form. The cooperation between experts was always so tacit. Under the continuous cooperation of Wang Yu, Uranus, and the others, Moffat's health bar dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. After some time, the circle of scales on Moffat's neck was completely peeled off by Wang Yu, and Moffat's health dropped to less than 10%. Pay attention to the boss's health. Clear the surrounding people first. Just when Moffat was about to be beheaded, Uranus and the others turned to look at Wang Yu. Killing all non-friendly targets other than the boss was the first of the 3 rules of killing a boss. Although Wang Yu was alone, Wang Yu's damage output was higher than Uranos's party. That was why Uranos and the others did not deliberately chase Wang Yu away from the start. At this moment, Moffat's blood was already in the red, but he had not gone berserk yet. It was obvious that he was struggling at death's door. There was no point in keeping Wang Yu, who was a powerful damage dealer. It was reasonable to kill the ox after it had left the millstone. As Uranus changed the topic, Zeus condensed a thunder spear and aimed it at Wang Yu with his 5 fingers. With a purple glow, the lightning spear stabbed towards Wang Yu, who was on Murphy's back. At the same time, Apollo changed the direction of his attack. He raised his hand and threw 10 daggers at Wang Yu. Although Wang Yu did not have the intention to harm anyone, Wang Yu was still on guard against this group of unknown people. Wang Yu had expected Uranus and the others to attack him. Facing the incoming lightning spear, Wang Yu calmly extended his right hand and threw out an energy wave towards the lightning spear. Upon seeing this, Zeus frowned slightly and clenched his fingers. "Pah!" The lightning spear dissipated, and the lightning element that filled the sky turned into a huge net that covered Wang Yu from top to bottom. Wang Yu smiled and appeared right above the thunder net in a flash. Zzzt. The thunder net missed and covered Murphy's head. Pft, 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 pft. Apollo's daggers also lost their target and stabbed into Murphy's neck that had lost the protection of his reverse scale. Fall. In midair, Wang Yu used eagle step and landed instantly. The boxing glove in his hand turned into a 2-meter-long giant sword, stabbing down from above Murphy. Pft! With a muffled sound, the sword in Wang Yu's hand accurately pierced into the back of Murphy's neck, all the way to the hilt. Before Uranus and the others could launch a second wave of attacks, Wang Yu had already landed on the left side of Murphy's neck. Then, he grabbed the hilt of the sword tightly with both hands and used thunder step to kick upward. Wang Yu and his sword fell in the opposite direction. Pft! The huge blade in Murphy's neck was pulled downwards by Wang Yu's strength. Murphy, who did not have much HP to begin with, suffered such a heavy blow. His huge head was immediately cut off by Wang Yu's sword. Plop! The huge dragon head fell to the ground, creating a deep pit with a diameter of several meters. Murphy's corpse also turned into specks of light. Bang! After his death, Moffat exploded in midair. Glittering equipment and items fell from the sky like rain. Grab it! When Uranus saw this, he immediately raised his shield and rushed to the spot where Murphy was just now. The others also followed him without any prior agreement. Actually, according to the drop settings of Rebirth, Wang Yu was the one who attacked the boss, as well as Moffat's main enemy and killer. Therefore, Moffat belonged to Wang Yu. Therefore, even if Wang Yu did not pick up the items dropped by Murphy, Uranus and the others would not be able to pick them up during the protection period. However, if the system had a policy, the players would have a countermeasure. There were many ways to snatch a boss in the game. One of the most common ways was to step on the items dropped by the boss until the protection period ended. During this period, unless the owner of the item killed everyone, no one could pick it up. However, just as Uranus and the others rushed to the bottom of the dropped items, Wang Yu leaped and stepped on Uranus' shield, using it as leverage, and his figure suddenly rose higher. Uranus felt his vision darken. Immediately after, a figure appeared above him. The figure grabbed left and right with both hands, flying up and down, grabbing all the items that Merphite had dropped. Uranus and the others were not the kind of people who would do anything for others. Seeing that Wang Yu had snatched all the items dropped by the boss, Ares swung the scythe in his hand at Wang Yu's right leg without saying a word. Obviously, this group of people had failed to snatch the boss and intended to force the loot to drop. Just as the scythe hooked onto Wang Yu's ankle, Wang Yu smiled slightly in midair, retracted his right foot, and raised his left foot gently. Smack! Ares' scythe was kicked away by Wang Yu. Seeing that his attack was interrupted by Wang Yu's kick, Ares was stunned on the spot. On the other side of Wang Yu, Zeus put his hands together, and a lightning cage suddenly condensed around Wang Yu. Apollo stroked the dagger with his index and middle fingers, and the dagger was covered in a layer of flames. He then tossed the dagger into the air, and with a swing of his arms, the dagger transformed into dozens of other daggers that flew towards Wang Yu with blazing flames. Chapter 1851. Ha! Just as the dozens of daggers were about to turn Wang Yu into a hornet's nest, Wang Yu suddenly shouted, and a dazzling crimson-black flame burst forth from his body. Burning Flame Steps. Activate. Burning Flame Steps not only provided powerful attribute bonuses, but it also had the ability to dispel magic. Whoosh! As hellfire rose from Wang Yu's body, Wang Yu shattered Zeus' lightning cage under the powerful impact of hellfire. Wang Yu's thunder stomp also came off cooldown after escaping from the cage. At the same time, lightning flashed under Wang Yu's feet, and he landed heavily on the ground. Unexpectedly, the daggers flying toward Wang Yu changed direction in midair and chased after him. Seeing that the daggers had caught up to him, Wang Yu did not panic. He extended his right hand and drew a longsword. With a slight shake of his wrist, 6 plum blossoms appeared. Clang, 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 clang. Omit the number of clangs here. 6 plum blossoms. Each plum blossom had 6 petals, and the 6 plum blossoms were 6 by 6, 36 swords. In that instant, Wang Yu relied on the arc of his wrist to thrust out 36 swords in an instant. The flaming daggers that were flying towards her were all accurately flicked to the ground by Wang Yu. Seeing this scene, Uranus and the others' eyeballs almost popped out of their socket. Interrupting Ares' scythe lockbind was one thing. Uranus and the others were confident that they could do the same. As a ruthless person who dared to challenge the evil dragon Moffat alone, it was reasonable for Wang Yu to have such skills. Uranus and the others could understand that Feng could break free from Zeus' lightning cage by relying on the suppression of skills. However, the last wave of skills that knocked down Apollo's flaming daggers was beyond their imagination. Before this, Wang Yu had already dodged 2 control skills with his extreme maneuvers. Just look at Wang Yu's situation. Not to mention several dozen daggers, even a random arrow would be difficult for an ordinary player to block. After all, there was a limit to a person's ability to focus their mind. To be able to display 2 extreme moves in a row was already a top-tier expert. However, not only was Wang Yu not stabbed by the daggers, but he also knocked all the daggers away with a backhand. Such a terrifying skill was simply shocking. The speed of his reaction and the accuracy of his attack had reached an unimaginable level, causing Uranus and the others to turn pale. What kind of monster is this? In his shock, even a powerful man like Uranus couldn't help but doubt if Wang Yu was a real player. On the other side, after Wang Yu knocked down the flaming daggers, he didn't stop at all. He stomped on the ground and did 2 somersaults and a backward jump to increase the distance between him and his opponent. He then jumped out of the attack range of Uranus and the others. After jumping out of the attack range of Uranus and the others, Wang Yu frowned and stared at the people in front of him with a serious expression. His hands unconsciously rolled up his sleeve. It was common knowledge that once Wang Yu rolled up his sleeves, it meant that he was in a serious state. Wang Yu's fighting style had always been indomitable. No matter how many opponents there were, he would always press forward and rarely retreat. In just one exchange of blows, Uranus and the others had actually forced Wang Yu to take the initiative to retreat and increase the distance between them. It was clear that Wang Yu had now realized how difficult it was to deal with this group of people opposite him. To be honest, ever since Wang Yu entered Rebirth, he had never encountered any decent opponent. Even if he encountered a team of professional players, he could still put up a fight. There were only 3 people in front of him, yet they were able to force Wang Yu to such a state. It was clear that their strength was something that Wang Yu had never encountered in the game. Only Kyushu Kingdom's team could pressure Wang Yu with the way ordinary people fought in the game. However, these people in front of him were obviously stronger than Kyushu Kingdom's team. Both sides looked at each other and were stunned for half a minute. No one made a move. Of course, Uranus didn't dare to do so. This was because these people were very confident in their strength. If they couldn't defeat a single person in a team, it would undoubtedly be a devastating blow to their morale. Even if Uranus wasn't confident, he didn't dare to let his worries become reality. On the other hand, Wang Yu didn't want to do that. Don't blame Uranus and the others for having bad intentions. The reason why Wang Yu was able to kill Moffat so easily was because of these people's help. Since they had already taken the item, it would be a little unkind to kill them. Moreover, these people in front of him were all experts. Fighting them would definitely waste a lot of time. Now that Sky Dragon City was still being attacked by monsters, Wang Yu naturally didn't have the time to deal with these people. However, if Uranus really didn't know what was good for him and insisted on fighting, Wang Yu didn't mind teaching them a lesson. "You, who are you?" After a long time, when Uranus saw that Wang Yu didn't attack again, he also realized that Wang Yu didn't want to make an enemy out of him. Therefore, he put away the shield in his hand and asked in broken Mandarin. "I should be the one asking that question," Wang Yu calmly said. "You don't look like local players. We're defending the city, and you suddenly came out and asked me who I am." "Sorry." Uranus was stunned for a moment, then quickly pointed to the people around him and introduced themselves. "We're Pantheon. Unlocking the evil dragon Moffat's seal is our mission." "Pantheon?" Hearing these 3 words, Wang Yu touched his chin and said calmly, "Oh!" Uranus and the others were stunned again when they saw Wang Yu's expression. Uranus and the others were quite proud of their team's reputation. They thought that when Wang Yu heard the 3 words Pantheon, he would be amazed and say that he's heard of you for a long time. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu's reaction was so calm. It was as if he heard Zhang San, Li Si, Iron Ox, David, Jack, Dog Leftover, and other common names. He didn't show any emotion at all. This made Wang Yu's mysterious aura even more intense. Obviously, a powerful expert like Wang Yu must have seen a lot, but he was so calm when he heard the name Pantheon. It was obvious that Pantheon was just a passerby in his eyes. "I'm Iron Ox." Ignoring Uranus' surprise, Wang Yu replied calmly, "I'm busy. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." "Oh, okay," Olanos quickly said. "Go ahead. You won't ambush me again, will you?" After spending so much time with Wuji, Wang Yu was no longer a naive greenhorn. Of course, he wouldn't believe Uranus' words so easily. Seeing that Uranus agreed so readily, Wang Yu narrowed his eyes and solemnly warned, "Let me tell you, I can see you from the back of my head. Even if you attack me from behind, it won't work." Ugh! Uranus and the others heard this, and a large drop of sweat flowed down their foreheads. Chapter 1852. Under Wuji's command, the players of Sky Dragon City easily and methodically blocked the waves of attacks from the monsters. The monster siege was caused by the evil dragon Moffat. Now that the evil dragon Moffat was killed, the monsters lost their leader, and their morale naturally dropped. When Wang Yu returned to Sky Dragon City, the monster siege was nearing its end. When Wang Yu carried the evil dragon Moffat's head and flew up the city wall, the morale of the monsters under Sky Dragon City plummeted, and they fled in all directions. System notification: the monsters under the siege are beginning to disperse. System notification: the monsters under the siege have retreated. The defense of Sky Dragon City has succeeded. The construction rate of Sky Dragon City has increased. Sky Dragon City players have obtained the title Homeland Defender. Homeland Defender. Title: all income increased by 100%. Duration: 30 days. The announcement of the defense's success floated in the sky above Sky Dragon City. The evil dragon Moffat was killed. As the city lord of Sky Dragon City, besides receiving the reward for defending the city, Dugu Jiuqiang also received an additional reward. It was an epic recipe. Dragon Slayer Cannon Paper Quality. Epic: the blueprint for the defense weapon Dragon Slayer Cannon. The Dragon Slayer Cannon, as the name suggested, was a weapon that could kill dragons. After defending the city this time, Dugu Jiuqiang also realized that ordinary magic crystal cannons and ballistae were not worth mentioning in front of advanced dragons. Although Sky Dragon City's city walls were sturdier than most major cities, the monsters that massacred the city twice were dragons. So, no matter how sturdy the city walls were, it was useless if they could not defeat the dragons. Now that he had a weapon like the Dragon Slayer Cannon, even if it was not like adding wings to a tiger, he at least had a way to fight back against the dragons. As the city lord of the Celestial Dragon City, Wang Yu received additional rewards as well as the tax reward. However, at the end of the day, Wang Yu was only there to help. Even if the evil dragon Moffat was killed by Wang Yu, compared to the Dragon Slayer Cannon, Wang Yu's reward was a little shabby. Wang Yu's reward was only a passive attribute. Iron Fist Diplomacy, passive attribute. Increases deterrence to enemies, factions, and countries by 50%. During the city war, the attack and defense of all main city players within the attacking range of the main city are increased by 50%. Skill introduction: weak countries have no diplomacy. Justice only exists under the fist, and truth only exists within the range of cannons. This skill was equivalent to a super big buff. Although its attributes were not weak, its use was limited to city wars, faction wars, and nation wars. It could not be considered practical, nor could it be considered too costly. After all, especially in the later stages, city wars, nation wars, and faction wars were the main game mode. Although Wang Yu was a pacifist, and did not like to take the initiative to attack others, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. No one could stop others from attacking the main cities under Wang Yu's name. Such a skill would definitely play a decisive role when the curtains of the future city wars were drawn. Dugu Jiuqiang should have been in a good mood after successfully defending the city and receiving an additional reward. However, he stared at Wang Yu in horror and asked, "Ox God, did you kill Moffat?" Obviously, if Moffat did not die, Dugu Jiuqiang would not receive an additional reward. "Yes." Wang Yu nodded indifferently and said, "I killed him." Hiss! Hearing Wang Yu's words, Dugu Jiuqiang could not help but gasp. When Moffat attacked the city just now, Dugu Jiuqiang was standing on the city wall. Dugu Jiuqiang had personally experienced how strong Moffat was. Although Dugu Jiuqiang also knew that Wang Yu was strong, it would obviously take some effort to kill a monster like Moffat, who had unparalleled defense and attack power. However, from the time Wang Yu pulled Moffat away to the time Wang Yu returned to Sky Dragon City, Moffat was killed by Wang Yu in just a short period of time. This, if it were not for the fact that he was very familiar with Wang Yu and that Dugu Jiuqiang had also received an additional reward, Dugu Jiuqiang would even think that Wang Yu was bragging. What shocked Nine Lone Spears even more was that from Wang Yu's casual tone, it was as if killing a boss like Moffat was as easy as killing a wild monster on the side of the road. It was not worth mentioning at all. Just how strong and confident did he have to be able to remain so calm? Really? The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Hearing that Wang Yu said that he had killed Moffat, Chuanjin did not have the slightest doubt. Instead, they all came up and asked excitedly, "What did it drop? What did it drop?" "Let me see." Wang Yu scratched his head and took out all the items that Moffat had dropped just now. Although Moffat was strong, in the setting, Moffat was actually a quest boss, and the drop rate of quest bosses was quite low. Although it looked like it was raining items, in fact, most of them were materials. Evil Dragon's reverse scale, precious material, can be used to forge equipment. Evil Dragon's claw, precious material, can be used to forge equipment. Evil Dragon's meat, precious ingredient, can be used to cook gourmet food. Anyway, there were many treasures on giant dragons. Whether it was dragon scales, dragon claws, dragon meat, or dragon tendons, they were all extremely precious materials. Even things like dragon dicks could be used as ingredients for medicine. This was refreshing to Wang Yu and the others. They did not expect Rebirth to be such a big game. Apart from that, there was a skill book and a pair of boxing gloves left. Raging Dragon's Breath, rare skill. Causes powerful dragon flame damage to the target by breathing. Usage requirement, Dragon Descendant. Dragon Descendant was not a profession in Rebirth, but a special racial bloodline. After Wang Yu killed Long Outian and released Dales, Dragon Island regained its freedom. As the first neutral main city to declare independence, all the players of Yu Huiqing and the Celestial Dragon City under his command received the Dragon Descendant Bloodline quest. With their identity as Yu Huiqing or Celestial Dragon City, as long as they passed the trial, the players could obtain anything from dragons and obtain the qualifications to obtain the Dragon Descendant Bloodline. For example, Wang Yu had obtained the recognition and following of Dragon Emperor Dales. The dragons in his body were the direct bloodline of the Golden Holy Dragon, one of the 4 ancient races in Rebirth. They were extremely noble. As a dragon descendant, although there was no increase in attributes, they were immune to all the so-called suppression of dragon aura and divine aura. Giant dragons like Evil Dragon Moffat were like worms in front of Wang Yu. This was why Wang Yu could easily remove Moffat's dragon scales. The people of Chuanjin had naturally done the Dragon Descendant quest before. These guys also had the Dragon Descendant bloodline. However, Raging Dragon's Breath was obviously a mage skill. It would not be very useful for others to learn it, so they could only benefit the Trash Mingdu. Chapter 1853. Hee. Then I won't hold back. Mingdu smiled wretchedly, took the skill book and casually patted it. The skill book turned into a white light and entered Mingdu's body. Come, perform a skill. Seeing that Mingdu had learned a skill, the rest of Quanjin cheered. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Mingdu was also a guy who liked to show off. Under everyone's instigation, Mingdu spread his hands and had everyone disperse. Then, he cleared his throat, opened his mouth, and spat out 4 fire dragons. The 4 fire dragons flew up, down, left, and right respectively. Boom! With an explosive sound, the 4 fire dragons drew 4 arcs in the air and hit the same point. Whoa! Everyone exclaimed in admiration when they saw the dragon breath that Radiant City spewed out. With Mingdu's current magic power and the effect of the skill just now, the damage of this spell was undeniable. However, in Rebirth, there was a rule that was not set. The higher the damage of a skill, the lower the hit rate. For example, Mingdu's Thunderstorm spell and Wang Yu's Shadow Chain Kick were skills with a relatively long preparation time. When dealing with expert players, if one's prediction and timing were not grasped well, it was extremely easy for the target to dodge. However, Dragon Breath of Rage was a spell that could be cast from up, down, left, and right. Its range was so wide that it directly sealed off all the space for the target player to dodge. If one did not have movement skills such as teleportation, this spell could be said to have a 100% hit rate. Mingdu's magic was very extreme. Not only did he have a full body of fire attribute equipment, but he also had the vermilion bird staff, which was the embodiment of the fire element. Together with this powerful breath skill, his strength was directly raised by a lot. Damn it! Just when everyone was surprised by Mingdu's skill, Mingdu cursed angrily. This sh*T skill is too overpowered. It actually consumed half of my mana. Hearing this, everyone was speechless again. Mingdu was a mage who focused all his points on intelligence. With his equipment that increased intelligence, his mana was definitely an astronomical figure. A single skill consumed half of Mingdu's mana. It could be seen how terrifying the skill's consumption was. Fortunately, Mingdu had learned this spell. If someone else had learned it, they wouldn't have been able to cast it with their limited mana. What kind of skill was that? Dragon Breath. It was the dragon's signature move. In the game's background, dragons had almost unlimited mana points. Naturally, using a skill like Dragon Breath wouldn't make much of a difference. However, when used on human players, the mana cost of Dragon Breath was very obvious. Besides, every skill had its pros and cons. This skill had high attack and hit rate. If it didn't consume too much energy, wouldn't Mingdu be invincible after learning this skill? He really didn't put the system in his eyes. Uncle Nyo, are these gloves for me? After admiring the Dragon Breath skill, to place one's pride's eyes fell on the gloves in Wang Yu's hands. His eyes were filled with excitement. To place one's pride knew that the gloves in Wang Yu's hands were a legendary weapon tailor-made for Wang Yu. It could transform into 18 different weapons and become an invincible legendary weapon. With such a legendary weapon in hand, Wang Yu wouldn't be interested in any Grandmaster of Combat's weapons. At this moment, the gloves in Wang Yu's hands were most likely going to be his. Okay. Wang Yu glanced at the glove's attributes and tossed it to place one's pride. To place one's pride's eyes lit up after receiving the glove. He hurriedly removed the thorn of despair from his hands and put on the new glove. This gauntlet covered Pride's entire arm and fist. The gauntlet was jet black and covered in black dragon scales. The dragon scales were engraved with all sorts of magic inscriptions and shone with a strange luster. The fists were like two roaring dragon heads. The back of the gloves was lined with sharp dragon teeth. It looked very mighty and domineering. After equipping the new weapon, to place one's pride displayed the glove's attributes to everyone. Evil Dragon's Roar Gauntlet. Epic Attack. 600-600 mana. 200-200 Defense. 600-600-20 Agility plus 65 Strength plus 65 Vitality. Evil Dragon's Strength. Attack Stance. Passive Skill. The gauntlet has been enchanted with draconic magic. The user will gain the strength of dragons and all skills will be increased by 50%. Evil Dragon's Avatar. Defense Stance. Passive Skill. The gauntlet has been enchanted with draconic magic. The user will gain the strength of dragons and all skills will be increased by 50%. Evil Dragon's Fury. Magic Stance. Passive Skill. The gauntlet has been enchanted with draconic magic. The user will gain the strength of dragons and all attacks will be increased by 50%. Evil Dragon's Shield. Active Skill. Activates shield mode and blocks all damage within the area of the shield. Lasts for 10 seconds and consumes 10% MP cooldown, 15 seconds. Evil Dragon's Psychic Cannon. Active Skill. Consumes 30% MP. Can fire 5 consecutive cannon attacks at all targets within a 800-meter radius. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Background introduction. The Evil Dragon Moffat was originally a war weapon created by the dragons. During the Descent of Darkness, the war machine Moffat developed intelligence after years of fighting against the Nephilim race. Under the corrosion of the darkness, Moffat became violent and could not differentiate between friend and foe. In the end, Moffat was sealed on Dragon Island by Dragon Emperor Dales. The evil dragon's roar was Moffat's first weapon form. Class requirement: Shield Warrior, Grandmaster of Combat level requirement, 65 epic skill. Charge, Evil Dragon Burst. Charges energy to deliver a fatal punch to the target. The longer the charging time, the higher the damage. The attack ignores all defense. Consumes 50% MP cooldown, 1800 seconds. Gauntlet. So this gauntlet was actually Gauntlet. Gauntlets were also called Gauntlet. They were a very special type of weapon. Not only did they have high attack power, but they also had strong defense. There was a shield warrior in the Templar team who used this type of gauntlet. Although its defense was not as good as a shield warrior with a tower shield, its mobility and attack power were far superior to a normal shield warrior. In PvP, it was a very powerful weapon. Monks were one of the main branches of the Grandmaster of Combat. They were a damage output class. However, due to the limitations of this class, the current monk players mainly focused on control and evasion. They mainly focused on tanking. In comparison, Grandmasters of Combat did not have strong bodies. Therefore, the main advantage of a monk as a tank was their control ability. Skill priority was the most important factor in control. A 50% increase in skill priority was undoubtedly the biggest boost to the monk class. Its significance was no less than an assassin's 50% increase in stealth. As for skill resistance, it referred to the resistance to the target's skill priority. For example, a shield warrior had high skill resistance. Normally, a grab skill with low skill priority would have very little effect on a shield warrior. Since Grandmasters of Combat were a relatively weak class, their skill resistance was naturally not as high. To place one's pride with a 50% increase in skill resistance, his survivability was also greatly increased. Chapter 1854. Other than that, Grandmasters of Combat's attack and defense were relatively weak. However, the Dragon Roar's Dragon Flame damage and the Dragon Shield's defense made up for the Grandmasters of Combat's weaknesses. What was more worth mentioning was that the Psychic Cannon, an attack skill with an 800-meter range, also made up for the Grandmasters of Combat's weaknesses. As for the last skill, the Psychic Cannon had the special effect of breaking through defense. It could be said that this set of boxing gloves made up for all the Grandmasters of Combat's weaknesses. To place one's pride was just young and inexperienced, but his own strength was not weak. If he had not chosen such a weak class like the Grandmaster of Combat and his weapon level was not up to date, his combat level would at least be no lower than Bao San. Now that he had this pair of gloves, even if he were to face a first-rate pro player, he could put up a fight. The motley crew's strength was uneven to begin with. Other than Wang Yu's trio, Chuanjin's strength fluctuated too much and was not reliable. Relatively speaking, only Chun Xiang and Bai Mingyu were relatively reliable. To place one's pride now had a new weapon and Mingdu had a new skill. These two were like tigers that had grown wings. Although their strength was not at the level of a top-tier boxing expert, it was still a considerable leap. Fortunately, Chuanjin took the opportunity to take a stroll in the game during the break. They did not expect to have such an unexpected reward. The Celestial Dragon City was finally secured. According to the agreement, after the defense was successful, Dugu Jiuqiang signed a 1,100,000 gold contract with Chuanjin. Wuji took the contract and transferred 300,000 gold to Wang Yu. The rest was distributed to the others, except for to place one's pride and Mingdu. Obviously, the extra 200,000 gold that Wang Yu received was the money for the gauntlets and skills. From this point, the Quanzhen sect was still very clear about this. Even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. No matter how extravagant one's words were, it was better to take out the money directly. For the next 2 days, Chuanjin took advantage of the break in the competition to train in seclusion. On the third day, the American server's knockout tournament officially began. It was different from the Asian server. Due to the existence of the Japanese teams in the Asian server, nearly half of the teams in the Asian server were not very strong. Therefore, their standards were relatively lower. The opponents were not strong, and the teams that qualified did not display any amazing strength. On the other hand, the 6 teams from the American server were all top-tier teams, and all of them were top-tier professional players. After today's matches, it could be said that the audience had a feast for their eyes, sweeping away the displeasure brought about by the motley team's shameless behavior. In the end, 3 teams from the American server successfully advanced. They were RLT Rebel Team, from North America, Free Team, and SFI Sci-Fi Team, from Country A. These 3 teams were also veteran strong teams in the esports circle. No one was surprised that they had successfully advanced. As for the defeat of the other 3 teams, everyone felt regretful. Such a strong team had actually lost in the elimination round. If it had been a few days ago, it would have been a different result. Fate really made a fool out of people. It seemed like esports competitions also depended on luck. After the competition ended, the audience left the venue. After the audience left, the venue became quiet. Wang Yu and the others also got up and left. However, when they reached the entrance of the venue, suddenly, a group of blonde young people walked toward them. From the uniform of these young people, it was not difficult to tell that these teams were the European servers teams that were going to compete tomorrow. This group of people should also be here to familiarize themselves with the venue in advance. PTN. Looking at the letters on the group of players, Wuji was stunned. He immediately touched his chin and muttered to himself, "It's actually Pantheon." Pantheon? Wang Yu's ears were very sensitive. Wuji muttered casually, but Wang Yu heard it clearly and could not help but repeat it. "You don't know them," Wuji explained with a smile. "These are all famous people in the esports circle. As a gamer, you probably haven't heard of them." "That's right." The others also gossiped at the side. This Pantheon is the world's strongest club, known as the Real Madrid of the esports circle. It has won the championship 5 times and is the club with the most championships in the history of esports. What's Real Madrid? What does it have to do with esports? Wang Yu's curiosity was extremely strong. "They just don't lack money," Mingdu said with a face full of envy and jealousy. "This club doesn't care if the esports players suit their team's style or not. As long as it's a top player, they will spend a lot of money to poach them into their team. It's precisely because their team's configuration is quite luxurious and almost every player has won the honorary title of the most valuable esports player. That's why they're called Pantheon." At this point, Mingdu did not forget to flatter Wang Yu and said, "But this time, I think you're very likely to be noticed by the boss of Pantheon, old cow." Haha. Wang Yu faced Mingdu's flattery. Wang Yu smiled slightly and thought to himself, could it be that the group of experts I met in the game not long ago are from Pantheon? Just as Wang Yu's thoughts were running wild, he suddenly heard a deep voice. "It's you?" Wang Yu heard the voice and quickly looked up. He saw a big man with blonde hair who was about the same size as him pointing at him with a face full of surprise. Although the big man looked very unfamiliar, Wang Yu felt that he had seen him somewhere before. "Do we know each other?" Wang Yu asked, puzzled. "Me," the big man said excitedly in rusty Mandarin. "I'm Uranus, Pantheon. We've met before." Uranus. Hearing the name, Wang Yu finally thought of something and said, "So it's you. You're much more handsome in the game than you are now." Ha ha ha! Uranus laughed awkwardly and said, "We need to pay attention to our image. Wasn't that right?" Esports stars were still stars. As a top-tier professional like Uranus, personal image in the game was still very important. After all, appearance was the face of the club. It was not good to leave one's name in the history books if one was ugly. "You're here to watch our match too?" Uranus then asked Wang Yu. "No." Wang Yu shook his head and said, "I'm here to take part in the competition." "Take part in the competition?" Uranus was shocked and said, I didn't expect Team 9 States to have an expert like you. It looks like we're going to have a hard time in this competition. Uranus was a top-tier professional. Team 9 States was one of the teams that he was interested in. Birds of a feather flock together. With Wang Yu's powerful strength and being from China, Uranus definitely thought that she was from the Kyushu Kingdom's team. I'm not from Team 9 States. Wang Yu shook his head again. Chapter 1855. Then, you're from BTR? Alanos was surprised. I didn't expect you to speak Mandarin so well. I'm Chinese. Wang Yu was speechless. I'm from the motley crew. These are my teammates. As he spoke, Wang Yu pointed at Wu Ji and the others. On the other hand, Wu Ji and company were dumbstruck as they stared at Wang Yu. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. You guys know each other? Wu Ji asked Wang Yu in surprise after he recovered from the shock. Logically speaking, even though Wang Yu was extremely skilled, in the eyes of Wu Ji and the others, Wang Yu was just a noob with strong gaming skills. Not to mention being a famous person in the esports circle, even when it came to gaming, Wang Yu only had a smattering of knowledge. They did not expect this seemingly stupid guy to know people from Pantheon. Looking at the situation, Wang Yu seemed to be quite familiar with people from Pantheon. Yes, Wang Yu nodded indifferently. We fought not long ago. Which one did you hit? Wu Ji asked curiously. All of them, Wang Yu said with certainty. Awesome! The people of Quanzhen sect gave him a thumbs up and praised him from the bottom of their hearts, as expected of the Ox God. Even when he fought against the best professional players in the world, he would always fight with his own team. Motley Crew? After knowing which team Wang Yu belonged to, Alanos was no less surprised than Wu Ji and the others. As a top professional player, Alanos had done his homework on the major teams before coming. He had naturally heard of this motley crew. However, according to the rumors, this motley crew did not have a good reputation. This was a group of unorthodox players. Not only were they a grassroots amateur team, but their fighting style was also extremely unorthodox. The strength of their players was nothing to write home about, but they were all shameless and had hundreds of strange tricks up their sleeves. They were very eye-catching in the information of the major teams. That was why Uranus had some impression of this team. The social circle of online games was more realistic than reality. Those who could hang out together were basically all experts of the same level. After all, in reality, two people with different incomes could still find similar goals, but in the game, most people's goals were to become stronger. If players wanted to become stronger, they needed to obtain resources. Whether it was quests or dungeons, players of different levels would not be able to play in the same world. Uranus had witnessed Wang Yu's strength. Although none of the Pantheon members had used their full strength in their previous clash, Uranus could tell that Wang Yu was holding back. It had only been 2 rounds, but Alanos' team had already felt an unprecedented sense of pressure. Wang Yu's strength was evident. Such a powerful guy was actually in the same team as a bunch of amateurs. Was the team's information just nonsense, or were these guys hiding their terrifying strength and deliberately throwing out a smokescreen? Not bad, Wang Yu said with a smile. Compared to them, I'm just a newbie. If it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't have been able to come to this arena. Newbie? Uranus and the others who had just calmed down were once again thrown into a state of turmoil. An expert like Wang Yu was only a newbie in front of this group of people. Didn't that mean that these guys were even stronger? Had the standard of the local players reached such a high level? Could it be that they had been looking at the sky from the bottom of a well? At this thought, Uranus and the others felt a chill down their spines. One had to know that Rebirth was a brand new game mode. After playing the game for so long, Uranus and the others had encountered many experts who had turned the tables because of the new mode. Now that they heard that there was someone stronger than them, they did not dare to doubt it. After all, the world was full of strange things, and esports players were ultimately just ordinary people. Of course, this was only wishful thinking on Uranus' part. The newbie that Wang Yu mentioned was referring to the game level, while Uranus and the others understood it to be in terms of strength. This could only be said to be a misunderstanding. Not at all. Seeing Uranus' expression, Wuji immediately realized that this group of people had misunderstood. Hence, he quickly explained, "Don't listen to his nonsense. It's not what you think. Actually, we are also your fans." It would have been better if Wuji had not said this. After listening to Wuji's explanation, Uranus was even more convinced of the motley crew's hidden strength. He had long known that the Chinese had a deep tradition of not revealing their strength, but now he had truly witnessed it. Seeing that Uranus was only willing to believe what he wanted to believe, Wuji could not do anything about it. After Wang Yu and Uranus casually chatted for a while, the Chuanjian crew left the arena. Looking at the backs of Wang Yu and the others, Uranus frowned and said, "It seems that this competition will not be as easy as I imagined." Ares also said, "Look at how arrogant they are walking. They must be very confident in their strength. Don't scare yourselves. Pantheon's contestants were top-notch masters, after all, and there were still people who understood." Seeing that his teammates were scared by a few words, Rocky said speechlessly, "From the previous battle video, this group of people's strength is very average. Only those two Grandmasters of Combat are slightly stronger." "That Grandmaster of Combat seems to have said that he's a newbie," Ares retorted. "You stupid donkey, I can even say that I'm your father." Rocky rolled his eyes in disdain and said, "Do you believe me? I'm your father. You stupid donkey." Ares was furious. "Look." Rocky spread his hands and said, "We're so close, but you don't believe what I say. Are you very close to him?" Hearing Rocky's words, Ares, who was initially excited, was suddenly speechless. At this time, Rocky continued, "That kid is just bluffing." "No, no, no." Uranus waved his hand and said, "When he said that, I felt that his eyes were very sincere. He didn't look like he was lying. What Wang Yu said was not a lie. It was just that Uranus had misunderstood her. Wang Yu was not being sincere." At this point, Uranus pondered for a moment and said, "There's an old saying in Huaxia, it's called being silent. Oh no, it's better to believe it than not. Anyway, this is a motley crew, we have to be careful." Rocky laughed and said, "Boss, you're too cautious. They're just a bunch of bugs. Since you said so, then let me dispel your worries." "Rocky." Uranus was shocked when he heard that. "You must not provoke them." "Don't worry," Rocky said with a smile. "Don't you know what I do?" Chapter 1856. Just as Uranus and the others were about to continue walking into the venue, the teams for today's competition also walked out of the venue one after another. The team walking at the front was the free team from Country A. "Hey, old friends, long time no see." Seeing the free team players walking out of the venue, Rocky welcomed them enthusiastically with open arms. The professional esports circle was only so big. As the world's top veteran teams, they were very familiar with each other. "Look who this is. Is it Rocky?" Seeing Rocky greeting them not far away, the free team members also stopped in their tracks. The player in the lead said excitedly, "When did you come? Did you see our competition?" "Sorry. Brother Wade, my little spider." Rocky pretended to be guilty and said, "I could have made it to the last match, but I ran into a few old acquaintances when I came in. Unfortunately, I missed it." "Old acquaintances?" The guy called Wade was startled when he heard that. He asked with some puzzlement, "What kind of old acquaintances made you miss our free team's competition?" Of course, it's also the participating team this time. Speaking of this, the expression on Rocky's face turned into a look of worship, and he said excitedly, "They may be the strongest opponents of our pantheon in this competition." "The strongest team?" Wade tilted his head and asked with a face full of doubt, "Which team can get such a high evaluation from Pantheon?" Although Wade's tone was curious, there was a hint of unwillingness in it. However, this was also reasonable. Everyone was a top expert, and everyone was very confident in their own strength. Even Pantheon did not dare to say that they could win against other teams. As the previous champion team, Pantheon was naturally the imaginary enemy of all the top teams. Wade did not know how many times he had practiced with Pantheon, just to be able to compete with Pantheon in this arena. Pantheon's strongest opponent? Rocky's words were obviously saying that if the free team wanted to be a strong opponent of Pantheon, they had to stand aside. There was another team that was stronger than the free team. Wade was certainly not convinced by this. "It's a motley crew," Rocky said. "Haven't you heard of them? These guys are quite powerful." "A motley crew? Just them?" Wade laughed out loud when he heard that Loki's formidable opponent turned out to be a motley crew. "Old buddy, is your Pantheon not adapting to this new game mode? You actually think that that kind of stinky bug is a formidable opponent?" Right now, the motley crew was infamous. Not only did the entire world know of this group of shameless players, but even the professional team circle had heard of this group's style. Of course, Wade had heard of this team that cheated in the professional arena. No. Rocky waved his hand and said, "Don't let pride and prejudice cloud your judgment. Some things have to be experienced before you can speak. Is that so? Could it be that your Pantheon has fought with them?" Wade asked with a sneer. "Of course," Rocky said. "They just enjoy the fun of playing with the enemy in the palm of their hands. Do you think they are weak if they can play with the top masters in the palm of their hands?" Hearing Rocky's words, Wade was slightly startled, and then still disdainfully said, "It's just a low-level trick." Seeing Wade take the bait, Rocky laughed in his heart and said mysteriously, "They are all Chinese people and know Kung Fu." "Kung Fu? If Rocky didn't say this, Wade might have believed Rocky's nonsense, but when he heard the word Kung Fu, Wade suddenly laughed mercilessly. "Kung Fu? You've watched too many movies. It's just a bunch of soft-handed guys." Since the myth of Kung Fu was shattered by scammers, the word Kung Fu has not only been sneered at home, but it has also become a big joke internationally. Wade couldn't help laughing when he heard the word Kung Fu. "You don't believe it?" Rocky struck while the iron was hot. "With your free team, you will definitely lose if you meet them." It had to be said that Loki really lived up to his name. He was as treacherous as the mythical Loki. Flattering one and trampling on another was the most basic means of sowing discord. The free team and others were not convinced by anyone. At this time, being trampled on by Rocky, Wade's anger jumped up. "Who do you think will lose?" Wade asked angrily. "Ha!" Rocky said with a smile. "Old man, I'm just giving you a reminder. Don't get agitated. No matter how bad your temper is on the field, it still depends on your strength." "Humph." Wade snorted coldly and glared at Rocky. "Don't look down on people. I'll let you see who will lose and who will win the game the day after tomorrow. Don't take it too hard." Rocky pretended to dissuade them again. "Are you in such a hurry to go home?" The onlooker seized the game more clearly. Rocky's words were obviously fanning the flames, but none of the angry free team members could hear it. "Get lost." Wade glared at Rocky, pushed him away violently, and left the venue with an unhappy look on his face. Seeing that Wade had taken the bait, Rocky returned to the team with a smirk and said to everyone, "Did you see that? We'll soon know how strong those guys are." Everyone from Pantheon. The next day was the European servers competition. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Although there was no competition today, the players of the major teams had also arrived at the venue early. How could watching battle videos compare to the feeling of being on the battlefield? Compared to the top teams, the motley crew's strength was somewhat lacking. Naturally, they had to put more effort into tactics. Especially since the European server had top teams like Templar and Pantheon, Wu Ji and the others had to find the right medicine and study the tactics of these opponents. You guys are the motley crew, right? Just as Wang Yu and the others were sitting in the audience seats and waiting for the teams to enter the venue, they suddenly heard someone speaking in broken Mandarin behind them. Hearing that, everyone from Chuanjian hurriedly turned around and saw a row of black-skinned and white-skinned spectators sitting behind them. These spectators had agreed to wear blue and white t-shirts with the word "Free" printed on them. Free team. Wang Yu and the others had also watched the competition yesterday. After seeing the spectators behind them, they immediately recognized the identity of the spectators behind them. Wu Ji was even more shameless as he boasted, "Did you see that? Our names have spread all over the world. Even the top professional team players know us." Hearing that, Wang Yu and the others were instantly speechless, as expected of the leader of Chuanjian. If one wanted to talk about shamelessness, one had to look at Wu Ji. Did he not know what kind of reputation he had? Chapter 1857. Seeing how shameless Wu Ji was, the freestyle team members were also shocked. The words they wanted to say were immediately stuffed back into their mouths by Wu Ji. Damn it, was there such a shameless person in the world? After being stunned for a few seconds, Wade said with a disdainful face, "Don't flatter yourself. I'm not in the mood to understand amateurs like you. The only reason I know you is because someone mentioned you." Speaking up to this point, Wade looked down at the Chuanjian team condescendingly and said, "I heard that your team has a Grandmaster of Combat who is not weak? Which one is it?" Hearing Wade's words, the Chuanjian team looked at Wang Yu in unison. "Oh!" Following the Chuanjian team's gaze, Wade's eyes fell on Wang Yu, and he immediately said with a face full of mockery, "I heard that you know Kung Fu." Wang Yu naturally heard the mocking tone in Wade's words, and Wang Yu really didn't have a good impression of this overbearing foreigner. But they were all contestants in this competition, and because of etiquette, Wang Yu nodded very modestly and said, "I practiced in the countryside for a few years." Ha 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 ha. Hearing Wang Yu say this, Wade was immediately amused. He turned his head and laughed loudly to his companions in a foreign language. "Did you see that? He really knows Kung Fu. It's so interesting." Wu Ji's Chun Xiang and Bao San were both top students and intellectuals. Naturally, they understood Wade's words, and their faces darkened in an instant. Although Wang Yu didn't understand what Wade said, he could see from the expression on Wade's face that he didn't seem to have said anything good, so he frowned and asked Wu Ji, "What did he say?" That, of course, Wu Ji knew the temperament of Wang Yu and evildoers run wild. Although Wang Yu treated people modestly, he was also extremely unyielding. His affection for Kung Fu was comparable to the affection he had for his wife. Needless to say, Evildoers Run Wild was even more arrogant and despotic. Even if he had nothing better to do, he would still look for trouble. If the two of them knew what Wade was talking about, there would be trouble. After hesitating for a while, Wu Ji said with some difficulty, "Old cow, this grandson is laughing at you. Don't be rash." "I know." Wang Yu nodded indifferently and said, "Everyone is here to compete. It's not good for anyone to cause a violent incident. If there's anything, just settle it on the field." "It's good that you understand, it's good that you understand." Seeing that Wang Yu was so reasonable, Wu Ji breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Wade turned his head again and asked with a mischievous smile, "China boxing, is it the kind of soft hands and feet?" Well, in a foreign language, only a few people in Chuanjian could understand it, but in Chinese, everyone could hear it clearly. For a moment, everyone in Chuanjian's eyes fell on Wade, as if they were looking at a dead man. There was a reason why there were few foreigners. This Chinese man fully showed the Chuanjian people his level of seeking death. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke the most terrifying one in Chuanjian. Of course, Wang Yu was a grandmaster, and his state of mind was still very detached. In the face of Wade's verbal provocation, Wang Yu said expressionlessly, What kind of boxing can't be practiced well? It's all soft hands and feet. Is that so? Wade stretched out his hand, grabbed Wang Yu's arm, pointed to his face and said, "Then let me see if your fist is soft or not." Humph! With his arm grabbed by Wade's big hand, Wang Yu snorted coldly and exerted a little force. Puh! Wade suddenly felt his palms sink, as if he had grabbed an incomparably heavy iron rod, and subconsciously let go, letting Wang Yu pull his hand back. Wang Yu turned his head and looked calmly at Wade. "Don't worry, there will be a chance. I'm just afraid you'll regret meeting me." "Oh, f***ck, listen to what he's saying." As soon as Wang Yu said this, Wade immediately exploded. What was arrogance? This was arrogance. As one of the world's top teams, the Free Team was so strong that even a team like Pantheon, which was full of big names, could not guarantee that they could win. As the captain of the Free Team, Spider Wade certainly had unparalleled strength and confidence. "I'm afraid you'll regret meeting me." People who dared to say such things to the world's top professional players were either ignorant newcomers or arrogant madmen. Wade had played games for so many years, and this was the first time he had been said such things. His mood could be imagined. Arrogant, too arrogant. The teammates behind Wade could not help but laugh when they heard this. They drew a cross in front of their chest with a mocking expression and shouted exaggeratedly, "May God forgive their ignorance. You guys are so annoying. If you want to watch, then watch the game quietly. If you don't want to watch, then get out." Wang Yu had a good temper, but it did not mean that everyone in Chuanjin was good-tempered. Evildoer Rampage was Wang Yu's #1 fangirl. At this moment, seeing Wang Yu being mocked, Evildoer Rampage was the first to lose it as he stood up. Mingdu, who was next to Evildoer's Run Wild, silently picked up 2 unopened beer bottles and handed one to Exquisite Dream. For a moment, the atmosphere at the scene was cold to the extreme, and there was an atmosphere of fighting at the slightest disagreement. The people from the Free Team were naturally not fools. Of course, they knew the consequences if the two sides really fought. In their eyes, the motley crew was just a group of reptiles. It was naturally not worth dying with these reptiles. Wade smiled and said, "This is the competition venue. Don't even think about dragging us down. Don't worry, I will teach you a good lesson in tomorrow's game." After saying that, Wade waved his hand at the opponents behind him, and the Free Team got up and left their seats. How inexplicable! Looking at the backs of the Free Team leaving, Exquisite Dream casually put the beer bottle in her hand on the ground. Her expression was as if she had eaten a dead fly. Not only Exquisite Dream, but the rest of Chuanjin was also confused. The Free Team suddenly came out to provoke them and then left in a hurry. It was really confusing. They did not know these guys at all, and there was no hatred between them. Could it be that the Free Team and the Arilang team were wearing the same pants? Were they here to seek revenge for the Arilang team? Chun Xiang was puzzled and asked, "Old cow, did you beat them too?" "Definitely not." Before Wang Yu could say anything, Wu Ji, who was at the side, rejected Chun Xiang's idea. "You seem to be very self-confident." Chun Xiang raised his eyebrows and was unconvinced. "Nonsense." Wu Ji rolled his eyes at Chun Xiang and said, "If they were beaten by the old cow, do you think they would dare to take the initiative to provoke us?" Chun Xiang was stunned when he heard Wu Ji's words. He quickly nodded and said, "That's true, that's true." Chapter 1858. But I don't know them at all. Wang Yu was also puzzled. It was obvious that the freelance team was here for Wang Yu. Wang Yu dared to guarantee that he definitely did not know these guys. "Since you don't know them, they must have heard of you from someone else." Wu Ji rubbed his chin and said, "You should know people from Pantheon among the professional players overseas, right?" "Yes." Wang Yu nodded. "That makes sense." Wu Ji said confidently, "It must be the people from Pantheon. These idiots from the freelance team didn't even know that they were being used." Without the underhanded and cunning tactics of the motley crew, The competition on the European server went on very smoothly. Even though all the teams in the competition were top-notch players, it was hard to tell who was better. However, soon enough, 3 teams advanced to the next round. Other than the All-Star team, Pantheon, the second team to advance was called the King Emperor team. As for the last team to advance, it was considered an old acquaintance of Chuanjin. It was the team that had hunted down Chuanjin before, the Templar team. This group of people from the Templar team was considered very valiant, but it was not easy for them to advance. It could be seen that the standard of the European servers teams was strong. It was obviously a level higher than the previous battle of the Asia server. Of course, it was not to say that the standard of the Asia servers teams was low. The main thing was that the home team was a solo player. In the esports industry, their strength could not keep up with the top-notch players. At the end of the competition, the 9 qualified teams from the 3 major servers had been confirmed. They were the Motley Crew, 9 states, and BTR teams from the Asia server, the Rebellious team, Freelance team, and Sci-Fi team from the American server, as well as Pantheon, Emperor, and Templar from the European server. Other than the Motley Crew that Wang Yu was part of, these 9 teams were the world's top veteran first-rate teams. Pantheon, BTR, and 9 states had occupied the top 3 positions in the esports industry for several years in a row. Logically speaking, although the Chuanjin fellows were all extremely daring and arrogant, they couldn't help but feel a little diffident when faced with such a big scene. Being arrogant also required strength. Chuanjin's group was naturally outstanding in front of other players, but in front of these professional experts, they were still lacking. Everyone present was a world-class expert, and many of them were once their idols. It felt like an amateur football expert was suddenly dragged to the World Cup to play with those top stars. It was a very subtle feeling. As soon as they returned to the hotel, everyone in Chuanjin frowned. Chuanjin had also come into contact with these top teams. Although the 9 provinces battle team was once defeated by them, everyone naturally knew how they won. If it weren't for Wang Yu, this BUG, the experts of the 9 regions team could easily beat up the people of Chuanjin. As for the Templar team, they had once chased Chuanjin to the ends of the earth. Thinking of being chased by this group of bastards, everyone still had a shadow in their hearts. Now, there were a total of 9 opponents of this level, and they would be playing tomorrow. It would be bragging to say that they didn't feel any pressure. After all, this group of people in Chuanjin was a realist. They knew better than anyone that no matter how thick one's thigh was, it wouldn't be as strong as one's own strength. In the face of so many strong opponents, it was reasonable that they didn't feel confident. How are we going to play tomorrow? Old dog Wuji, why don't you learn from other teams and deploy them? This group of people in Chuanjin was really anxious. In normal competitions, other teams would have to analyze their opponents and make various deployments before the competition. Chuanjin only cared about eating, drinking, and playing, and never thought about these things. At this time, seeing that Wuji just sat there drinking tea and watching TV without saying a word, everyone began to criticize the incompetent advisor Wuji for being irresponsible. Deploy my ass. Wuji rolled his eyes and said, the difference in strength is too big. What's the use of tactical deployment? You're talking as if you can win by cheating. F***ck. After being despised by Wuji, everyone was so angry that they grimaced and said, then you should at least analyze the opponent. There's no need to analyze. Wuji waved his hand and said, haven't we seen the free team's competition? We'll observe how the others play tomorrow. Free team? How do you know that our opponent tomorrow is the free team? To place one's pride was puzzled. Nonsense. Wuji looked at to place one's pride as if he was looking at an idiot and said, Chick, you've been with us for so long, why haven't you improved at all? Today, the free team took the initiative to provoke us. Tomorrow, will they let us fight with other teams first? Speaking up to this point, Wuji said again, this group of people in Pantheon has fought with Old Cow before. They know that Old Cow is not easy to deal with, so they deliberately let the free team walk into our trap. So, tomorrow we must show them what we're made of. Not hiding your strength anymore? To place one's pride asked again. Oh my God! Wuji covered his face with one hand and touched to place one's pride's head with the other. He was speechless and said, "What kind of F***king brain is this? We're not their opponent even if we go all out, and you still want to hide your strength? What are you thinking?" Then, during the elimination round, "That's called strategy. Show the enemy that we're weak, understand?" Wuji sighed and said, "Using the same move twice. Do you think everyone is as cute as you?" "Bah! You're the cute one, your whole family is cute." To place one's pride was furious. "Ahem." Bao San coughed and said coldly, "Chick, watch your words. You can scold him, but don't drag me into it." To place one's pride was speechless. Wuji's words were very reasonable. Based on the strength of the motley crew, to be able to fight their way out of the elimination round was already their limit. If they wanted to go further, they would basically be at a level where they couldn't reach the highest level. Under such circumstances, they had to be prepared for every match, because the current opponents were not the same as before. If they were not careful, they could lose a normal match. As for the previous tactics of hiding experts like Wang Yu to preserve their strength, it was obvious that it would no longer be effective in this situation. Instead of hiding their strength, it was better to bluff. This way, those teams who planned to step on the motley crew to advance would have to weigh their own strength. It was unknown whether it was because they were overly nervous, or to ensure that they had sufficient energy and stamina, but after dinner, the otakus of Chuanjin's sect did not play games for the first time. Instead, they returned to their rooms early to rest. After a quiet night, the next morning, everyone entered the competition venue under the reception of the staff. After a round of competition, the S-Rank World Professional League finally officially kicked off. Chapter 1860. According to convention, the first thing the teams did after entering the arena was to introduce their teams, starting with their background, qualifications, and battle records. Everyone here is a top-tier team, each with a glorious battle record. If I really had to make a fuss, I could make a fuss. But in order not to have my legs broken by the readers, I chose to skip this long paragraph. After the team introductions were over, the 9 qualified teams entered the arena one after another and sat in their seat. The rules of the competition were the same as before. For the sake of fairness, the competition would use a random draw system. The system would randomly choose 2 teams to compete. However, every team had the right to challenge the team they wanted to challenge. After the 9 teams took their seats, the host on stage announced the start of the competition. At the same time, the arena lights dimmed, and 2 pillars of light descended from the sky, landing on the positions of the teams. Wait! Just as the pillars of light were about to start the random draw, a voice suddenly rang out in the arena. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. The lights turned and landed in the direction of the voice. They saw Wade press the challenge button with one hand and point at Wang Yu and the others with the other. "We, the freelance team, want to challenge. We want to challenge Ragtag team." Whoa! Wade's words were met with boos in the arena. Everyone knew that the Motley Crowd battle team was the only battle team that had qualified as an amateur amongst the 9 battle teams. As the name implied, the amateur team was just for fun. Compared to the professional team, they were naturally much weaker. Such a weak team was definitely the weakest of the 9 teams. The teams present were all famous experts in the industry. As experts, they naturally had to have the dignity of an expert. Not bullying the weak was the basic principle of an expert. If they were randomly assigned to an amateur team, then there was nothing they could do about it. The system was the best arrangement, so they could just treat it as a lucky day. But to challenge an amateur team just because they were a professional team was a bit disdainful. What was a challenge? A challenge was a fight against a stronger opponent out of confidence in one's own strength. If the opponent's strength was far inferior, then what kind of challenge was that? That was bullying. Only those who were not confident in their own strength would use the weak as a stepping stone. Bullying noobs was a despicable behavior in the eyes of ordinary players. Now that it had appeared in a top-tier professional competition, it was truly shocking. Even the various pro players who were also part of the finalists didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The freelance team is still as promising as ever. They actually challenged the amateur team. This is the funniest thing I've seen this year. I really don't know what this stupid donkey Wade is thinking. When the Pantheon members saw Wade jump out to challenge the motley crew, they also sighed. What a brainless guy. He's not brainless. Rocky, the instigator, sneered. If you didn't know that the Grandmaster of Combat was very strong, would you have challenged him in your shoes? Hearing Loki's words, Uranus and the others were speechless. It was human nature to bully the weak. Everyone wanted to be a gentleman because they couldn't bring themselves to do so. Of course, in Western culture, the gentleman should be changed to a knight. Actually, who didn't want to enter the next round easily? They just didn't have a good reason to convince themselves. The freelance team was not a bunch of idiots. Of course, they wouldn't just be used like that. The reason why they jumped out to challenge the motley crew was entirely because someone had stirred up a fire. With a reason to beat them at their own game, the responsibility could be completely pushed to Pantheon in the end. Rocky said they were very strong, that's why we challenged them. Wade had probably prepared dozens of such reasons. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better for the freelance team to directly challenge Pantheon? Never treat others like fools, because when you treat others like fools, you will become a fool. See, I told you so. Being challenged by a freelance team was something expected. As the parties involved, the motley crew was mentally prepared to be challenged yesterday. So when Wade named them to be challenged, everyone was not surprised at all. It was all expected. Wade had taken the initiative to provoke them yesterday, obviously to prepare for today's challenge to the motley crew. After the booing, everyone's eyes fell on the motley crew. The host also asked on the stage, "I wonder if the motley crew will accept the challenge?" According to the rules of the competition, the challenged party had the right to refuse the challenge, but the vast majority of battles would not do so. This was a world-class competition, watched by billions of players around the world. Wouldn't they be ridiculed by the world if they did not dare to accept the challenge? However, the motley crew did not need to care about such things. After all, they were originally the weakest amateur team. In this case, even if they refused to accept the challenge, it would be excusable. After all, no one wanted to be someone else's stepping stone, right? Who knows, they might even get a bye this round. Nonsense. Of course I'll accept the challenge. Just when everyone thought that the motley crew would reject the freelance team's challenge, Wang Yu did not even think about it and directly clicked accept the challenge. Wow! Seeing this scene, the audience boiled up again. The esports industry had developed for decades, and it was the first time that an amateur player was challenged by a top professional player. It was even more unheard of for an amateur player to accept a challenge from a top professional player. How long had it been, and they had completed 2 historical achievements. Everyone had seen the motley crew's previous matches. The audience had always held a disdainful attitude towards this amateur team. It was not because of their strength, but because the way they played was really disgusting. It was hard to imagine that such a group of trash could actually participate in a world-class professional league. If they had not seen how they defeated their opponents with their own eyes, everyone would have thought that this group of people had used their connections with the gaming company to get in through the back door. One could imagine the reputation of such a team. However, after Wang Yu decisively accepted the freelance team's challenge, everyone's original view of the motley crew suddenly changed. Whether an athlete was great or not wasn't determined by their success or failure, but by their actions. Knowing that the opponent was a top professional player, yet still daring to accept the challenge, this kind of spirit of facing difficulties and never giving up was the mentality that sports conveyed. They could be defeated, but they would not admit defeat. As a result, the motley crew's previous actions were seemingly forgiven by everyone. In comparison, the freelance team that challenged amateur players as professional players seemed increasingly insignificant. Chapter 1861. After confirming the two teams entered the arena under the guidance of the staff. The scene in the arena changed, and the holographic projections of the two teams appeared on the arena. Because Motley Crowd was the one being challenged, Motley Crowd had the home advantage. In the first one-on-one match, Motley Crowd would choose the map. What map should we choose for the first match? Although Wang Yu was the captain of Motley Crowd, Wang Yu was a simple and crude person with a simple mind. Wang Yu also knew that Motley Crowd's individual strength was far inferior to other teams. Choosing a map naturally could not be done casually, so he turned around to seek Wuji's opinion. After all, Wuji was Chuanjin's inept advisor. Arena, Wuji said firmly, the probability of losing points is too high. We can't lose any points that we deserve. Yes. Wang Yu nodded and chose the arena. Seeing that the map on the field had changed to an arena, the audience was surprised again. Arena? Are they going to fight head-on? Awesome. That's awesome. I didn't expect Motley Crowd to have such guts. Even the two commentators were dumbfounded. That's not right. When did this Motley Crowd become so tough? Indeed, according to Motley Crowd's usual style, they would definitely choose a large map as long as they were the home team. After all, with the strength of Motley Crowd, not allowing the opponent to score would be considered a win. However, this time they chose the arena, which was a tough map. It was indeed somewhat unexpected. Sister Qingxue, the first match is up to you. After choosing the map, Wuji turned around and greeted Yang Na. As mentioned before, there were many opportunities to lose points later on, but they must not lose the points that they could get at the beginning. Yes. As a martial artist, Yang Na had always done things in a straightforward manner. After receiving Wuji's order, she responded softly and was directly transported to the arena. Archer? And a female archer? As soon as Yang Na stepped onto the stage, everyone was completely confused as to what the motley crew was thinking. The arena was the smallest map in the game, and the archer, the most ranged profession, was a profession that consumed a lot of map. As we all know, when an archer PK with another player, most of the time, they would rely on the terrain and speed to kite the opponent and continue to grind the opponent to death. On the arena map, the archer's advantage in speed could be said to be directly cut in half. In such a small area, not to mention using the terrain, even kiting was not possible. Not to mention that the archer was a woman. In the game, female players and female drivers were basically on the same level. It was a derogatory term. It wasn't that players could belittle women, but holographic simulation games were different from keyboard and mouse games. The combat level of players in holographic simulation games was closely related to their combat level in real life. In this aspect, women's combat level was slightly lower than men's. In the past, there were many female players in the esports league, but this time, there were very few female players. The motley crew had inexplicably chosen a tough map and had even thrown in a female archer. Could it be that they were here to deliver food to the enemy? Now there were already players who began to speculate, and the rumors were made with eyes and nose. They said that the motley crew received money from the free team, so they deliberately delivered points. One side was stupid and the other side was bad. This was something that happened all the time in the game. Combined with the motley crew's previous style and the current style, there was really a group of fools who believed it. The free team's player was an assassin. The assassin's name was very Chunibyu, and it was called Invisible Man. Although the name sounded silly, it was prominent in the esports circle. It wasn't that there were no assassins who were invisible. Even a newbie like Wang Yu often heard this phrase when he first entered the game. At first, Wang Yu thought it was a joke about the assassin's stealth ability. Later, he realized that it was this invisible man seeing the invisible man on the stage. Everyone was more convinced that the motley crew received money from the free team. In terms of professions, assassins basically had no natural enemies except for tank professions, especially vulnerable professions such as archers and mages. A female archer against a world-class assassin, the result was obvious. Ayaya. Seeing the disparity in strength between the two people on the stage, Loki couldn't help but sigh. What is this motley crew thinking? The archer versus the assassin in the arena, the outcome has basically been decided. Could it be that they really received money? Ares, who was on the side, was surprised. Don't listen to those stupid rumors. Uranus rolled his eyes at Ares and said, the free team is also a very strong professional team. Why would a professional player need to pay money to fight an amateur team? They are looking down on the free team too much. This should be a coincidence. Yo, 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 beautiful lady. When the invisible man on the stage saw that his opponent turned out to be a female archer, he was also a little surprised. He said with a smile, I advise you to surrender yourself. As a gentleman, I don't want my knife to draw on your face. In the face of the invisible man's mockery, Yang Na didn't say a word. She focused on the crossbow in her hand and meticulously pressed the crossbow bolts into the magazine. Click, click. As the crossbow bolts were pressed into the magazine, the crossbow in Yang Na's hand made a very rhythmic click sound. Yang Na's serious look was very much like the ruthless snipers on TV. Such temperament made everyone's eyes light up. 3, 2, 1, fight. With the countdown of the system in his ear, the battle began. As soon as the battle began, Yang Na rushed up with the crossbow in her hand. Seeing this scene, everyone was at a loss. Hey, 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 big sister, you are an archer. Shouldn't you run back to open up the distance? Why the hell are you running forward? Are you in such a hurry to die? Seeing that Yang Na, an archer, was rushing toward him, the invisible man was also stunned. Even he had some doubts about whether his sponsor had given money to the opponent. However, an expert was an expert after all. Being calm in the face of danger was a basic quality. He couldn't let Yang Na rush to him. The invisible man's figure flashed and disappeared into the air. Sneak, backstab, one set to kill. It was so simple for an assassin to deal with a fragile profession. However, seeing the invisible man disappear, Yang Na didn't panic at all. She raised the crossbow in her hand slightly, and a crossbow bolt flew out with a white light. At this time, Yang Na was only a few meters away from the invisible man, and the crossbow bolt arrived in an instant. Duong! With a loud noise, the crossbow bolt hit the invisible man's chest. The invisible man was pushed back 2 steps by a powerful force, and his stealth was forcibly interrupted. Chapter 1862. Concussive Shot. It was an archer's skill that could forcibly displace the target. At this time, the invisible man finally understood why Yang Na did not retreat. Most of the skills of an assassin lay in stealth. If an archer, a vulnerable profession, could not break the opponent's stealth state in PK with an assassin, the chance of losing the game was as high as 80%. Concussive Shot was the only skill that could force the opponent to displace and interrupt stealth. However, this skill was relatively slow to release. The reason why Yang Na rushed forward was to break the opponent's stealth state as soon as possible. But do you think you can win like this? Too naive. The invisible man smiled slightly. He held the dagger upside down and activated swift movement. He rushed to the front of Yang Na with a phantom, and then stabbed Yang Na with his backhand. The most important thing for an assassin in PK was stealth, while the most important thing for an archer against the enemy was distance. Sacrificing the advantage of distance to interrupt the assassin's stealth was undoubtedly a lose-lose strategy for an archer. At this moment, it was no different from courting death. After all, an assassin without stealth was also a melee profession, and an archer was basically a dead end if they were closed in. Was it not courting death to fight with an assassin in melee? The Invisible Man's dagger was extremely fast and accurate. In an instant, the dagger stabbed Yang Na's body. However, at this moment, Yang Na's figure flashed, and she used evasion to avoid the Invisible Man's attack. She flashed to the side, raised her hand, and shot an arrow at the Invisible Man. The two were less than a meter apart at this time, and Yang Na's arrow was extremely accurate. Puff! There was a muffled sound. The arrow directly penetrated the Invisible Man's throat. Seeing this arrow, the audience was stunned. In Rebirth, whether a skill or an attack hit or not could be judged by the touch and sound. However, the sound of Yang Na's arrow did not sound like it hit the target. Bang! Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, the Invisible Man suddenly exploded into a cloud of smoke. At the same time, the Invisible Man appeared behind Yang Na. It's a shadow clone behind him. Seeing that the Invisible Man had dodged Yang Na's shot, everyone in Chuanjin could not help but frown. Although Yang Na was a very low-key person, unlike the other members of the Chuanjin regiment who went around stirring up trouble, everyone was well aware of this young lady's abilities. As a martial artist, aside from Wang Yu, Yang Na was unrivaled in Chuanjin. Her strength was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. However, the Invisible Man had actually dodged the arrow. Moreover, what worried everyone the most was that Yang Na's evasion skill had even been tricked into revealing itself. Archers were a class that dealt damage over time. Their skills were relatively weak, and they only had one displacement skill. Now that they were in close combat with an assassin, a class with extremely high lethality and mobility, without a displacement skill, it could be said that it was quite difficult for them. Wuji and the others had thought that Yang Na would be the first to secure a point. They had not expected the Invisible Person to be so powerful. In the end, he was still a top-notch professional player. His skill was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Rest assured. Just as everyone was worrying for Yang Na, Wang Yu calmly said, "It doesn't matter to her whether or not she has an evasion skill. This is just the beginning." "Haha. Beauty, your evasion skill is gone, right? Just give up." Using shadow clone technique, the Invisible Person appeared behind Yang Na. Then, with a strange smile on his face, he held the dagger hilt with both hands and stabbed Yang Na with a backstab. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Yang Na's legs staggered and her body twisted, assuming an extremely strange posture. The Invisible Person held the dagger in both hands and rushed from behind Yang Na to the front. The backstab missed. Seeing Yang Na evade the opponent's attack in an extremely strange manner, the audience was slightly surprised. On the other hand, the professional players below had a horrified expression on their faces. After all, amateurs enjoyed the show, while experts recognized the artistry. In the eyes of the ordinary audience, Yang Na had merely dodged a skill. Only the true experts knew how high the technical content of the backstab needed to chop off the Invisible Person. F***CK. What kind of skill is this? Do archers have this kind of skill? 9 states, 3 mountains, 5 peaks was also an assassin. At this time, seeing Yang Na's skill, he immediately jumped up. 5 lakes 4 seas face darkened. Bullsh *T skill. This is clearly positioning, alright? Positioning. Hearing 5 lakes 4 seas words, 3 mountains, 5 peaks face darkened as well. As the person involved, the Invisible Person's heart was even more turbulent at this moment. Using a displacement skill to dodge an Invisible Person's skill was understandable. This was, after all, a top-tier professional competition. For professional experts, this was a basic operation. Because of this, the invisible person had deceived Yang Na's evasion. However, using movement to dodge a skill, moreover dodging a backstab from a peak-class expert that was almost guaranteed to hit, was somewhat unbelievable. After all, positioning was not a skill. It was not determined by the system unless the player had really dodged the attack. In such a situation, the invisible person was still able to dodge the attack just in time. This was a bit ridiculous. A fluke. It must be a fluke. Although the invisible person was surprised, he was still a great expert who had been famous for a long time. Whether it was his mentality or his operation, they were all top tier. When the backstab missed, the invisible person suddenly turned around, offsetting the weightlessness of the missed skill. Then, with both feet on the ground, he slashed the dagger horizontally at Yang Na's neck. Throat slit. Facing the invisible person rushing over, Yang Na did not panic. She twisted her feet and turned in a circle, causing the invisible person's attack to miss again. This time, the invisible person's mentality was a little broken. Dodging the first time could be explained as a coincidence, but could it also be explained as a coincidence the second time? How King high was his luck? While dodging the invisible person's attack, Yang Na raised the crossbow in her hand and fired 3 crossbow bolts at the back of the invisible person's head. The invisible person hurriedly turned around and waved the dagger in his hand up and down, accurately knocking Yang Na's 3 crossbow bolts to the side. Just as the invisible person raised his dagger to block the bolts, Yang Na rushed forward, following behind the bolts and rushing in front of the invisible person. After missing the throat slit, the invisible person was already in a state of panic. At this time, he was also busy blocking the flying bolt. When he saw Yang Na rushing in front of him, he was completely stunned. Yang Na grabbed the invisible person's shoulder with her left hand and pulled and pressed down. At the same time, she jumped and rode on the invisible person's back. In order to attract players, the female players dressed as sexy as possible. This was especially true for the archers, who all had long legs. *CK. I'm so envious. Seeing the invisible person's neck being clamped by Yang Na's snow-white thighs, the audience could not help but whistle, unreservedly expressing their envy for the invisible person. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version website. Chapter 1863. The Invisible Man, a game geek, seemed to be a single old dog. He was directly stunned by this sudden happiness. Just when everyone was lamenting the Invisible Man's luck with women, Yang Na firmly fixed the Invisible Man's head with her legs. At the same time, she stretched her hands left and right and took out a crossbow arrow from the ammunition clip on both sides of her thighs. Then, she stabbed the Invisible Man's eyes with her backhand. Puff! A sound that did not sound very powerful was heard. 2 crossbow arrows were deeply inserted by Yang Na into the Invisible Man's eye socket. Just like that, everyone in the audience felt what it meant to be shaken. Especially those guys who were envious of the Invisible Man just now. In the next moment, they subconsciously covered their eyes, and their faces turned pale. Damn it, this harmless-looking little girl was actually so cruel. Ah! In the ring, the Invisible Man let out a heart-wrenching scream. Of course, it was not pain, but fear. As a holographic simulation game, although Rebirth was real, it was still very humane and did not add pain drop. Otherwise, this would have taken the Invisible Man's life. Pata! After inserting 2 crossbow arrows into the Invisible Man's eyes, Yang Na's legs loosened, and she somersaulted backward and landed steadily on the ground. At this time, the Invisible Man's mentality was completely broken. Rebirth had a very disgusting control effect called blind. Once blind was used, the person would be blind and could not see anything at all. As a normal person, they would be very anxious in this state. Of course, the archer did not have a blind skill, but Yang Na was more ruthless. The first move was a physical blind. Wouldn't it be very unreasonable if he could still see things when his eyeballs were pierced? Old Cow was a very strict author. The Invisible Man suddenly fell into endless darkness. The assassin's conventional way of playing was to make the target unable to see themselves. Yang Na was more direct. She simply made the Invisible Man unable to see anything. This was also another kind of giving him a taste of his own medicine. The Invisible Man could not hit Yang Na when he was not blind. At this time, he was blind, so naturally, Yang Na would not be able to hit him. After blinding the Invisible Man, Yang Na immediately distanced herself. No matter how the Invisible Man waved his dagger and slashed, he couldn't hurt Yang Na at all. Yang Na, on the other hand, meticulously shot her arrows into the Invisible Man's body. The pitiful Invisible Man's HP was depleted in the darkness. When he saw the light again, he had already been sent out of the arena and sent back to his team. In the first round, the motley crew won. The victorious Yang Na gently lifted the hair on her face and revealed a smile that seemed beautiful but was actually terrifying. Whether it was the audience or the contestants, they all remembered this terrifying face. TSK, TSK, TSK. Rocky clicked his tongue inside. It's a good thing those idiots from the free team went up to challenge her. Otherwise, if we had encountered her, we would probably have suffered the same fate. Of course, this move of Yang Na's was no stranger to Team 9 Provinces and Team Motley Mob, because Yang Na had used this move in the domestic competition. As a melee archer, Yang Na had neither explosive output nor control skills. If she wanted to win, in addition to exquisite positioning, she also needed the assistance of other fighting method. This move of blinding through the eyes was also a unique move of Yang Na. As the challenger, the free team had no doubt that they could kill the motley crew. However, they were defeated in the first round in this way, which could be said to be a great setback to the morale of the free team. In the first round, everyone enthusiastically expressed that they wanted to be the first to go up. However, in the second round, everyone pretended that they didn't say anything, and then lowered their heads and said nothing. What a joke! Everyone had seen the game just now. The other party could still counterattack in a disadvantageous venue and with a disadvantageous profession. It could be seen that this group of people was not as useless as they had previously thought. They were professional-level experts. It was already disgraceful to win against amateurs. If they went up and were killed like the Invisible Man, wouldn't they lose face all the way to their grandmother's house? Moreover, this group of amateurs were a group. If a little girl was so careless, wouldn't the others be even more ruthless? This time, it was just an eye-piercing. If they cut their vagina and stabbed their anus, it would be a trauma for the rest of their lives. It wasn't worth it to be beaten into a mental illness just for playing a game. I'm not going, I'm scared, I'm scared. F***CK. You bunch of cowardly donkeys. Wade almost fainted when he saw his subordinates all acting like this. You're so brave. Go ahead. The players of the free battle team were just like their names. Not a single one of them put their captain in their eyes. After being scolded by Wade, everyone retorted, especially the warrior who was the furthest away from Wade and wielding a red greatsword. He was the fiercest in his scolding. Wade pointed at the warrior with a dark expression. Worf, you go for the second round. Me? Worf was stunned and asked in surprise, Why should I go? Because you're the loudest at me. Wade pointed at himself. And I'm the captain. You have to listen to me. Worf. When the free team was choosing their next player, Yang Na was also teleported to her team. Seeing Yang Na appear in the group, Gao put on a fawning look and shouted, Little Auntie Yang is awesome. Yang Na coldly pulled out a crossbow and glared at to place one's pride. I'll give you one more chance. Reorganize how you address me. Big Sister Yang is awesome. To place one's pride hurriedly corrected himself. Haha. Wuji laughed. To be honest, I didn't expect Little Sister Qingxue to win so fiercely. The other team's morale must have dropped quite a bit this time. As challengers and pro players, the free team's morale must have been high before the match. The reason why Wuji sent Yang Na out first was to suppress the morale of the opposing team. He did not expect Yang Na to be so vicious, and it even had an unexpected effect. Not only was the morale of the free battle team suppressed, but the audience also kept quiet out of fear. Who should we send out for the next round? Everyone asked. Although they had played the game with Wuji for so long, they couldn't guess what Wuji was thinking. And if they really wanted to guess, Wuji would shamelessly change his strategy at the last minute, not forgetting to humiliate those who tried to guess his thoughts. Therefore, in this situation, it was best for Wuji to act as a supporting character. Do you even need to ask? Of course it's old demon. You idiots! Wuji looked at everyone in disdain and then pretended to be pretentious. We're going to crush the other team's morale in one go. Please remember this book's original domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1864. With a flash of light in the ring, evildoers Run Wild and his opponent were teleported to the ring at the same time. This was a duel between powerhouses that had no suspense. As an expert in an independent team, Wolf had been famous for a long time and had many fans in the esports circle. As soon as Wolf entered the ring, his fans stood up and cheered for him. Moreover, Rampage's stunning battle in the knockout stage was deeply engraved in everyone's hearts. A normal punch repelled a top-tier Shield Warrior's charge, an awakening skill broke through a top-tier Shield Warrior's suppression, and a final stomp turned his opponent into a white light. Although his opponent had been exhausted before, he was still a shield bearer who was known for his defense and HP. In just 3 moves, he had killed a top-tier Shield Warrior. Whether it was judgment, reaction, or attack, evildoers Run Wild's attributes were almost perfect. Moreover, as a strength-type player, his battle was extremely thrilling to watch. He had even overshadowed Wang Yu, who was in the same arena as him. After all, although Wang Yu's mechanics were strong, most people could not see it. He had an arrogant attitude, while evildoers Run Wild's simple and violent fighting style was more in line with the player's taste. Such a powerful expert naturally attracted countless fans in a single match. In the eyes of the audience, he was one of the 2 best players in the motley crew, and in comparison, he was the stronger one. Now that evildoers Run Wild was on the ring in the second match, the audience was naturally excited. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Professional competitions were not only about skills and mechanics, but it was also very important to have information about the opponent. Although the independent team players looked down on the motley crew, they had also seen the motley crew's battle videos. Of course, Wolf knew how terrifying the Grandmaster of Combat before him was. Although evildoers Run Wild did not have many screenshots, his record of killing a top-tier Shield Warrior with 3 punches was still very impressive. Therefore, when he saw that his opponent was evildoers Run Wild, Worf was on full alert and did not hold back at all. As the countdown ended, Worf wielded his red greatsword with both hands and launched a combat aura slash at evildoers Run Wild. As for evildoers Run Wild, he did not dodge the incoming attack. Instead, he waved his right hand. Pah! Worf's aura slash was easily shattered by evildoers Run Wild. Of course, no one was surprised by evildoers Run Wild's high judgment. Aside from ultimate skills, Shield Warriors could even knock back charge, which had the highest judgment, with a single punch, not to mention Battle Aura Slash, which had extremely low judgment. If evildoers Run Wild hadn't broken it, it would have been unexpected. Since even ordinary players knew this, Worf also knew that the Battle Aura Slash was only a feint. The moment the Battle Aura Slash was unleashed, Worf followed up with charge at evildoers Run Wild. No matter how strong a Shield Warrior was, as long as he attacked, he would have an opening. The moment evildoers Run Wild dispersed the Battle Aura Slash, Worf was left defenseless. Before Evildoers Run Wild could retract his arm, Worf was already in front of Evildoers Run Wild. Although Evildoers Run Wild had the judgment to knock back charge, Evildoers Run Wild did not even have the chance to swing his fist. The only thing he could do now was to forcefully block the skill with his body. A warrior's combos were always simple and violent. As a top-tier shield warrior, Worf's combos must be superb. As long as his target was hit by one of his combos, Worf was confident that he could kill his opponent in one go without giving his opponent a chance to breathe. For example, this charge would stun the target after being knocked back. All Worf had to do was to follow up with Charging Slash and Rising Dragon Slash, and Evildoers Run Wild would be knocked into the air. Being knocked into the air meant that the opponent had lost the ability to fight. With the combination of Fierce Dragon Slash, Rising Dragon Slash, and Collapsing Earth Slash, the Grandmaster of Combat's meager HP would be dead for sure. However, all of these were just Worf simulations before he attacked. To put it nicely, it was fantasy, but to put it bluntly, it was fantasy. Dreams were always too full, but reality kept slapping them in the face. Just as Evildoers Run Wild was about to be knocked into the air by charge, Evildoers Run Wild suddenly twisted his legs like Yang Na did. He turned his body in a strange posture and accurately dodged Worf's charge. Seeing this familiar yet strange scene, everyone revealed a horrified expression. Was this a movement or a skill? If it was a skill, it was obvious that Worf's movement required him to completely avoid his opponent's attack. It was obvious that it did not have a priority. If it was movement, everyone had seen it in the previous match. If it was not a skill, how could there be such a similar dodging method? Just when everyone was astonished, Yang Na coldly snorted and rolled her eyes at Wang Yu. Both of you brothers will have your legs chopped off. Ha ha! Wang Yu laughed awkwardly. Don't mind the details. It's all because this move is too simple. We can't do anything about it if he can learn it after seeing it once. I'm going to kill you. Yang Na gritted her teeth and was about to rush up and fight with Wang Yu. Yang Na had been practicing 7 astral steps since she was a child. It took her 20 years to reach her current level, but Wang Yu said it was something that could be learned after seeing it once. What the hell was this? Not only did he secretly learn someone else's martial arts, he even dared to belittle it. Damn it! In a duel between experts, a single mistake could decide the outcome. The moment Evildoers Run Wild dodged Worf's charge, the outcome of the duel had been decided. Worf was an experienced expert. Although he was shocked that his skill had been dodged, he didn't panic in the slightest. Instead, he cancelled charge and swung his greatsword at the monster beside him with Whirlwind Slash. As expected of a top-tier expert, he could subconsciously make up for his mistake. It was obvious that his movements had become instinctive. If Worf's opponent was someone else, the Whirlwind Slash would have killed the opponent perfectly. Unfortunately, Worf's opponent was Evildoers Run Wild. After dodging Worf's charge, Evildoers Run Wild was ready to counterattack from behind. When Worf swung his sword and used Whirlwind Slash from right to left, Evildoers Run Wild extended his left hand and used Tiger Strike. He grabbed Worf's wrist and forcefully interrupted Worf's Whirlwind Slash. At the same time, his fan-sized right hand grabbed the back of Worf's head. Then, Evildoers Run Wild tripped Worf's head and pushed him forward with his right hand. Ouch! Worf screamed in pain as Evildoers Run Wild pressed his face to the ground. Pull up load next chapters. Chapter 1865. Bam! Evildoers Run Wild's strength was so strong that a crater was formed on the ground. Half of Wolf's face was buried in the ground. Go! The evildoer Heng Xing's ruthlessness was in no way inferior to Yang Na's. After pressing his opponent's face to the ground, the evildoer Heng Xing's arm fiercely pushed downwards. Rip! Wolf was pushed a few meters forward by Evildoers Run Wild. The ground of the arena was plowed into a deep ravine. Oh, go high! Seeing this scene, the audience felt a chill at the back of their heads, and even their faces felt a burning pain. Before Wolf could struggle to get up, Evildoer's Run Wild had already pushed him to the edge of the ring. He lifted Wolf with one hand, twisted his waist, and threw Wolf toward the edge of the ring. Bam! With a loud bang, Evildoer's Run Wild threw Wolf against the protective wall of the ring. The protective wall shook under Evildoer's Run Wild's monstrous strength, and Wolf was bounced back. At this time, the demon Heng Xing did not take 2 steps back. Instead, he leaped up and kicked Wolf's waist. Sky-shattering kick. Wolf's movement was fast. It was obvious that he had added points into agility. In fact, no matter what class the top players in the game had, adding points into agility was a must. After all, speed was crucial in a holographic simulation game. Evildoer's Run Wild's kick was one of the ultimate skills of a grandmaster of combat. It could even break the sky, let alone a warrior who had added points into agility and did not have much health. Wolf's HP had dropped a lot after being kicked by Evildoer's Run Wild on the ground. With this kick, he turned into white light and died on the spot. 3 moves. Another 3 moves. He blocked the combat aura slash, moved sideways to interrupt the whirlwind slash, and ended the battle with the last kick. Another top player was defeated by Evildoer's Run Wild in 3 moves. At this moment, the scene was dead silent. Even a top-notch expert could not last more than 3 moves against this grandmaster of combat. Just how strong was this person? Could it be that adding points to strength is the correct way to play this game? In the past, in the Chinese server, there was Grim Reaper's Left Hand and Evildoer's Run Wild. The two of them set off a craze for players to increase their stats, causing countless new players to go astray and wash their faces in tears. The game was forced to create a strange item that could only be found in free online games, such as cleanse potions. After this battle, Evildoer's Run Wild finally spread the seeds of evil to the whole world. The heavy sword had no edge, but it was extremely skillful. How could an ordinary person achieve this realm? Even Evildoer's Run Wild had quite a few pieces of equipment that increased agility. To move unhindered, how many major guilds in the world would give their boss equipment? Not to mention, melee professions like full-power grandmasters of combat and full-power warriors were fine, but what about full-power priests and full-power mages? In short, the source of all the chaos came from this battle. This was a story to be told later. How was it, boss? The technique I learned from you just now is no worse than that young chick, right? After leaving the stage, Evildoer's Run Wild showed off to Wang Yu with a face full of joy. Not bad, not bad. You're much more talented than her, but you're still far from me, Wang Yu praised with a face full of satisfaction. Seeing the two brothers flatter each other so shamelessly, Yang Na, who had calmed down after being persuaded by the Chuanjin members, went berserk again. You two bastards, stop bullshitting. You learned from me. You learned from my family's martial arts. I'm going to report you and break your dog legs. On the other side, the freelance team that had lost 2 rounds in a row not only had their morale hit rock bottom, but they were also having a mental breakdown. Actually, winning and losing was a common occurrence in the military. It was not shameful to count in this competition, but losing to a group of amateur players was very shameful. What was more frightening was that this group of amateur players was a bit ruthless. In the first round, 2 arrows pierced through the eyes, and in the second round, they were humiliated. Their attacks were ruthless, and their moves were vicious. This had dragged to the level of trampling on the physical body. It was as if they were trampling on the opponent's spirit. There was no telling what more vicious moves were waiting for them next. Their already low morale and terrifying aura enveloped them, causing the free team members to feel extremely anxious. Don't panic, everyone. This was the time to show the role of a leader. Seeing that everyone was on the verge of a mental breakdown, Wade hurriedly calmed them down and said, "Don't fall for the opponent's trick. They want to use these 3 moves to break our spirit. At this point, Wade pointed to Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild not far away and said, "Those 2 grandmasters of combat are the experts that the ragtag team relies on. Now they've pulled out their trump card to destroy us mentally." "Then who's up for the 3rd round?" Just as Wade was calming them down, everyone threw out the most crucial question. There was no point in saying anything more. The most important thing right now was to quickly choose the player for the next round. However, this player could not be themselves, because no one wanted to be pressed to the ground by the opponent. "Well," Wade scratched his head, then pointed to a strong man next to him and said, "Gospel, you go." "Me?" The man looked surprised. God, what's going on in this idiot's head? The others were also confused. Gospel is a healer. Are you sending him to his death? That's right. Gospel was also depressed. "You can't do this to me just because I treated your girlfriend to a movie." "What? You treated Wade's girlfriend to a movie?" Worf, who had just been ravaged by Evildoers Run Wild, asked in surprise. "If you can treat her to a meal, why can't I treat her to a movie? What a mess!" The others scratched their heads. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing that the focus of the discussion had strayed, Wade hurriedly coughed and said, "Can you get down to business? Gospel, don't change the topic. Then explain, why did you send me, a cleric, to my death?" Gospel was extremely displeased. Clerics had the lowest combat power among all the professions. Although they had countless life-saving methods, their damage output methods were pitifully few. The only self-destruct skill had a particularly high requirement. If a healer like a cleric went up to fight, the most they could do was maintain a situation where they could not win or lose. 2 consecutive rounds with expert. It seems that the opponent has done their best to crush us in terms of momentum, Wade explained. So their next player must be another Grandmaster of Combat. Then wouldn't I die even worse? Gospel said with a dark face. The tragic situation of Worf and the Invisible Man in the first 2 rounds still left a shadow in Gospel's heart. "But your death is the most valuable." Wade smiled and said, "You, a support class, exchange the opportunity of the opponent's best player. Won't we win the next round easily?" Chapter 1866. I'm a martial artist in online games, is stuck. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1867. Alright, it's my turn. On the Motley Bunch side, Wang Yu also stood up and was ready to go. Since they wanted to defeat their opponent in one go, the 3rd match needed to be played by an expert. Yang Na and Evildoers Run Wild had already gone up. The only player on Chuanjin that had a 100% chance of winning was Wang Yu. Wait! However, just as Wang Yu stood up, Wuji suddenly stopped him. "You don't have to go up for this match." Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was confused. "If he doesn't go up, are you going up?" "It's not that I can't go up." Wuji smiled faintly. "But I think I should give you guys a chance to perform." "Stop talking nonsense." Everyone curled their lip. "You just want to see us go up and embarrass ourselves, right?" This was a world-class professional league. There were many experts here, and every player was a top-tier pro player. On the other hand, the Motley Bunch's team was just a group of amateurs. At most, they were second-tier pro players. It was fine for them to fight in a group, but wasn't it just asking for a one-on-one? Although the people on Chuanjin were arrogant, they still knew their limit. With Wuji's personality, it wasn't impossible for him to let others go up and embarrass himself while he secretly laughed at them. "Look at you guys," Wuji sneered. "Don't worry, the next match definitely won't be an expert." "Why?" Everyone was puzzled. Wuji explained faintly, "Right now we're at the peak of our momentum. According to the usual practice, the 3rd match will definitely follow up. The opponent isn't stupid. They lost so badly in the first 2 matches, so they definitely won't send out an expert to fight against Old Cow in the 3rd match. I think there's an 80% chance that they'll send out a weaker player for the 3rd match. Nonsense, everyone said disdainfully. No matter how weak they are, they're still a top-tier pro. No matter how strong they are, they won't be able to deal any damage. Wuji laughed. Why do you think they'll send out a non-combat class? Everyone questioned. There are more than a dozen people in their team, and there are only 5 matches in total. No matter how they line up, they can't even get a cleric. Do you think a combat class would agree to this if they knew that the 3rd round would be a death match? This is a competition. Even the team leader wouldn't dare to send a combat class to their deaths, Wuji said with a smile. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Don't look down on the fact that professional experts worked for others for a salary. Even top-tier experts had their own dignity. Going up on stage to die was a shameful choice. Reputation was like life to a pro player. In this era, there was no lack of platforms to showcase one's abilities. Even the boss behind the scenes wouldn't dare to force the esports players to do something that would ruin their own reputation, let alone a mere captain. Especially now that they were in the middle of a match, if they angered the players and caused them to fight passively, they would lose more than just this match. Hence, in such a situation, the best choice was a non-combat class. After all, support classes were meant to be sold out. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be shameful for a non-combat class to be defeated. Then who's going for the 3rd round? After realizing this, everyone asked again. Wuji pointed at Yin Lao Air and said, "Second brother, go. It's safer for him to go." Are you looking down on us? The group of steel elites started to make things difficult again. That's right. I'm looking down on you guys, Wuji said in an extremely annoying tone. I'm afraid that you guys will be blown up by the cleric the moment you go up on stage. Wuji was more used to thinking about the opponent's tactic. Since the opponent was a cleric, it was easier for Wuji to think about it. As a cleric whose main playstyle was self-destruction, Wuji was naturally most guarded against the cleric's reckoning skill. With Wuji's mechanics, he could easily get close to the enemy and blow them up. Moreover, the opponent was a top-tier professional expert. It would be a piece of cake for him to blow up the motley crew of Chuanjin. To be safe, of course, it was best to find someone who could not be blown up by the opponent. Although the cleric's self-destruction dealt true damage that ignored defense, Yin Lao Air not only had high defense but also high HP. It would not be a problem for him to take 2 of the opponent's self-destruction. Who was afraid of who? Of course, the opponent was a top-tier professional after all. Wuji had no idea how many tricks and abilities they had. So before Yin Lao Air went up on stage, Wuji did not forget to remind him. Try to deal with them as much as possible. Don't be greedy and take the initiative to attack. As long as we don't let the opponent score, we'll win. Understood. Yin Lao Air nodded, then turned into a white light and teleported to the stage at the same time as his opponent. Huh? Seeing that the motley crew did not send out a Grandmaster of Combat as expected, but a shield warrior, the audience was a little surprised. The free team could not help but frown, especially the cleric Gospel on the stage. This was especially so for the cleric on the stage. When he saw that Wang Yu's opponent wasn't part of his plan, he was stunned. What's going on? Who is this? Gospel was dumbfounded. When it came to an amateur team like the motley crew, professional players would basically just take a look at the videos and pay attention to the more skilled players. As for the others, they were too lazy to waste their energy to understand them. For a person like Yin Lao Air, who was not very strong, it was reasonable that Gospel did not know him. However, the battle plan was to send out a Grandmaster of Combat. Now that the opponent had suddenly become a shield warrior, Gospel was caught unprepared. Just as Wuji expected, although Gospel was a non-combat class, he was also a top-tier professional with dignity. Even if it was a suicidal battle, he would not admit defeat. So before Gospel went up on stage, he had also simulated the battle with Wang Yu. The cleric's main damage output skill was self-destruction that ignored defense. As a cleric who added half of his points into vitality, Gospel's HP was definitely higher than that of a grandmaster of combat. As long as he could get close to Wang Yu, Gospel was confident that he could win this battle with dignity. However, his opponent was a shield warrior with coarse skin. This left Gospel with no way to attack. At the end of the day, the cleric was a magic class. Their HP growth was far inferior to that of a shield warrior. Even with half of his points into vitality, a level 70 cleric would only have around 80,000 HP. On the other hand, a level 70 cleric could have close to 200,000 HP. To put it bluntly, self-destruct was a skill that demanded HP for HP. Wasn't it ridiculous for a shield warrior with 80,000 HP to compete with a shield warrior with 200,000 HP? After a cleric's reckoning skill ran out, their HP would be reduced to 0. At that time, a single fart from their opponent would be enough to kill them. If the cleric did not have absolute confidence in killing their opponent, casually using a self-destruction skill would be a suicidal process. So when he saw that his opponent was a shield warrior, Gospel immediately gave up on the idea of self-destruction. Chapter 1868. A shield warrior and a priest could be said to be a golden pair. With these two classes, the team's survivability was guaranteed. As the best support for a shield warrior, priests naturally had a deep understanding of this class. Although a shield warrior was the strongest among all the classes in terms of defense and priority, and the position of this class was extremely important in the game, this class's flaws were also very obvious. First, low damage. Second, slow speed. The two most important aspects of PvP were damage output and speed. This class had none of them. A shield warrior might be very strong against a boss or a group of players, but in a 1v1, their biggest advantage was their endurance. The damage output of a priest was not high, but they had an advantage that other classes could not compare to, and that was a fixed damage output mechanism. The damage of a normal class's skills or spells depended on the player's equipment and attributes, as well as the opponent's counter. As a healer, most of the priest's skills were recovery skills, and under normal circumstances the healing of these skills was basically fixed. For a priest, intelligence was only used to increase mana. This was also why most priests increased their vitality and spirit to ensure their survivability. Intelligence was not very useful apart from increasing endurance. In any case, the healing mainly depended on the level of the skill. For example, a level 1 healing skill could heal 500. Even if a priest's magic power was as high as 1000, the healing effect would still be 500. This was an irreversible mechanism. Some people would also say, in a 1v1, what was the use of a priest having a fixed damage output mechanism? Could it be that they could still win by healing the opponent? Obviously, compared to a normal priest, a fixed healing mechanism was useless in a 1v1, but for Gospel, it was useful. Gospel's nickname was Poisonous Milk. This guy had a skill called Attend to One Thing and Lose Sight of Another. After activating this state, Gospel's healing skill could be used on any target, including local unit. However, the difference was that when the healing skill was used on an enemy unit, it would become a damage output skill of the same amount. Of course, even so, the healing output of a priest was fixed. The highest damage output of a priest's skill was only a few thousand. In this era where a normal attack could deal tens of thousands of damage, this little bit of damage was almost equivalent to scratching an itch. However, at this time, it was Gospel's only hope of winning. When the countdown began, Gospel raised his staff and threw a holy orb at Yin Lao Air from afar. Bang! With his short legs, Yin Lao Air didn't have the habit of dodging skills. He simply raised his shield slightly and the holy ball of light shattered into specks of light. When Yin Lao Er used his shield as a skill, there was a blind spot. During this gap, Gospel used his left hand and quietly threw 3 talismans at his feet. Gravity Rune. Priests and holy knights were both divine occupations, and many of their basic skills were the same. For example, holy knights could use the priest's heal, and priests could use the holy knight's gravity. The only difference was that a paladin's gravity spell could be directly cast on a target, while a cleric's gravity talisman was a triggered skill. Like a trap, the target had to be within the range of the talisman to activate. Just like the paladin's gravity spell, the target's movement speed would be greatly reduced under gravity, and the 3 gravity talismans could immobilize the target. After all, healing wasn't an instantaneous skill. On the contrary, healing took a long time to cast, be it the skill's activation or casting time. When healing a teammate, the teammate wouldn't be stupid enough to dodge. However, it was more difficult to hit the enemy. Since the opponent wouldn't just stand there and take a beating, then he would create the conditions for the opponent to stand there and take a beating. After burying the talismans, Gospel took a step forward and stepped on them. At the same time, Yin Lao Er finished blocking the holy ball of light. At this time, Gospel smiled at Yin Lao Er and made a provocative gesture with his finger. Then, he threw another holy ball of light. Gospel only had one goal, and that was to provoke Yin Lao Er. Holy Orb was the lowest-leveled cleric skill. Using this skill to continuously attack a target on the stage was equivalent to provoking them endlessly. Although I can't hit you, you'll still have to take my hit. Moreover, it's the low-level spit attack. Yin Lao Er was a combat class. Under normal circumstances, he would take the initiative to attack after being humiliated by a non-combat class. Now, if Yin Lao Er stepped into the range of the gravity talisman, he would fall into Gospel's trap. With Yin Lao Er's attack power, even if a skill hit Gospel, it wouldn't deal much damage. However, if Yin Lao Er triggered the gravity talisman, it would be impossible for him to escape. The gravity talisman was a low-level skill with low concealment, players had to step on it to hide, and it had a low chance of triggering. Moreover, its cooldown wasn't long, and once the target was controlled, it would be a piece of cake for an expert like Gospel to grind Yin Lao Er to death. No matter how high Yin Lao Er's defense was, it would be useless in the face of a fixed damage output. Gospel's calculations were brilliant. Not only did he simulate the battle, but he also put himself in Yin Lao Er's shoes. However, in the face of Gospel's provocation, Yin Lao Er acted as if he didn't see it. He just stood there and didn't move. Unlike the unruly guys from the Chuanjian school, Yin Lao's many years as a professional athlete had given him a good habit of obeying orders. In Chuanjian, although Yin Lao Er was a little smart, he was always the most obedient one. He was also the one who could command Wuji the most. Before going on stage, Wuji had reminded Yin Lao Er not to take the initiative to attack, because his opponent was a top-level expert. As a defensive player, if he took the initiative to attack, his opponent would take advantage of his weakness. As a good kid and a former athlete, Yin Lao Er naturally knew not to underestimate any opponent. At this moment, he also remembered Boss Wuji's teachings. Yin Lao Er, who used to be an athlete on the national team, was far more professional than anyone else on the team. In the face of Gospel's continuous holy light balls, Yin Lao Er maintained a calm mind. He only raised his hand to receive all the attacks, and didn't look like he was going to fight back at all. Provocation was sometimes a two-way skill. Gospel's original purpose of throwing the holy light balls was to lure Yin Lao Er into the range of the gravity talismans under his feet. Seeing how calm Yin Lao Er was, Yin Lao Er didn't panic, but Gospel was. P.S. Good evening, everyone. This is an automatic update. The sofa is yours. Please remember the domain name of this book. The fastest website for mobile version, You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.